Yes. Hello, everybody. Live streaming has started, and we're just about to commence the meeting. I'm Pat Edwards, and I'm chair of this planning committee. Welcome to the meeting this evening. There's no fire alarm planned today. Should the alarm sound, please leave via the nearest available emergency exit. Two of the closest exits are through the glass door behind you to my left and through the double doors onto the riverside straight behind. Please muster at Café des Amis. Members of the public are welcome to make their own recordings of the meeting using whatever non-disruptive methods they think are suitable. This meeting is being minuted, recorded and audio streamed via the Council's website. The Westgate Gardens gates on the riverside are locked at sunset, so members of the public must leave the Guildhall by the side exit through the glass door. The first item is apologies. Andrea, do we have any apologies?
We have apologies from Councillor Castle, Chair.
And do we have any substitute councillors?
No, we don't, Chair.
Thank you. Can we now move on to declarations of interests by councillors or officers? Could we have, Andrea, the general declaration covering quite a lot of contact that we all have with residents?
Yes, Chair. All or some councillors may have received correspondence from or spoken with applicants, agents, supporters or objectors, and some of the public speakers may also be known to members of the committee due to their work as councillors. Neither circumstance prevents councillors from participating in the meeting. However, any councillor who considers that they do not have an open mind in respect of any item on the agenda should not participate in the meeting when the relevant item is to be discussed.
And I think we've got several declarations of interest from the floor. Peter Old first, Naomi Smith second.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to recuse myself from discussion of agenda item 6, land south of the Thanet Way, as I believe I'm predetermined on that topic.
Thank you. Councillor Naomi Smith.
Thank you, Chair. On the previous, I objected to item 6, land of south of Thanet Way. Upon discussions and looking at this site, I now feel that I am open-minded on this application. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Buckman.
On item 11, I called that one in, but I have got the open mind on that one. But then on item number 9, the youth venue, I live under the same roof as Councillor Dawkins, so I will have to leave the room for that one.
Thank you. And Councillor Harry Mackenzie.
Thank you, Chair. Item 9, I work on St George's Street, but I'm just an employee. I don't have any stakes or anything.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Are there any other declarations before I move on? Thank you, everybody. Public participation. There are 21 or 20, I think now, public speakers this evening. And these speakers will be heard immediately after the officer's presentation for each relevant item. Thank you. Minutes of the meeting on the 2nd of April 2024. Could I have general assent that these are an accurate record of the meeting, please? Would you raise your hands? Thank you very much. Confirm that by general assent. Thank you. So we move to application it's item 6, application number CA 23-00379, land south of Thanet Way, Whitstable. Could we have the, thank you, Peter. Councillor who's leaving the room to do that now, before we start. And could I please ask the planning officer, Andrew Gamble, to introduce the report. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. Members will remember that this application is an outline application for 220 dwellings, together with a park and bus facility, as well as a shop/community building, open space and associated relevant infrastructure. Members will recall that in December last year, the application was brought to committee and the members voted to grant the application in line with the officer recommendation at that time. As set out in the update report, the council no longer in presumption. As such, the application is now being considered on a flat balance. So what that means is we're considering kind of the material considerations in favour of the application against the adverse impacts that would arise from the proposal, kind of considering the overall balance. So what I've done is I've prepared kind of similar slides in many ways to what I prepared back in December, and this is really just to kind of remind the committee members what it was that was considered. So what we've got here is the red line showing the site. I think you can see my cursor. So you've got the Tesco's to the east over here, the Rakehill Business Park over here. You've got the old Thanet Way that runs along the north of the site, the new Thanet Way that runs closely to the south, and then the Whitstable Heights development to the north. Here you've got the concept plan for the site. So in light orange, that's where the bulk of the residential development would be going, which would be a maximum of 2 stories. In the grey, we've got the park and bus area. The purple area here is for the community/retail area. And then you've got the general open space around the site. The purple strip here is the prow that runs through. And there's also some kind of arrows as well pointing through the site, which you can just about make out, I think, in that cursor, which would be, which basically show the kind of the angle of views that would be considered as part of any reserve matters application in the future. This is just a small plan just showing some of the active travel improvements that were proposed along the old Thanet Way, so improving this to 3 metres. The green shows the traffic lighted Toucan crossing that would be installed on the site. This is just a plan showing kind of the movement routes from the site itself, kind of with the yellow Tesco's, the pink Rakehill, and the blue and orange being kind of the routes into Whitstable. Here again are just some views of the site that I've taken just to remind members of what we're looking at. So this is a view looking east. You can see the old Thanet Way in the foreground with vegetation in the background and the site beyond that. Here looking in that direction where the green arrow is showing to west, again a similar view, vegetation along the perimeter of the site with the site in the background. This is showing the entrance to the site, so the access for the site would be up here, and you can see how the topography is slightly elevated behind, raising up to a ridgeline. Here, this is shown from within the Whitstable Heights site, so it shows kind of the context within which the site would sit when perceived from that direction. Here, this is a view from the prow, so you've got that runs across the site. So you've got the Whitstable Heights development there in the foreground, and then you've got the estuary beyond. And this is just a long distance view, really, just to show kind of the layout of the land kind of between the site and here. So you've got the new Thanet Way intervening, and it's not very clear actually on this big monitor, but in the distance there is where the site is located. So following the previous committee resolution back in December, I just wanted to make members aware of conditions that are to be proposed to be amended as part of this second recommendation. So members previously discussed 20% BNG being included within the condition wordings. So condition 32, which secures an ecological enhancement plan, that would be amended to include the 20% BNG as agreed previously. Condition 35, which is around the energy strategy for the site, that's to make specific reference to net zero in relation to carbon emissions, just to make clear that kind of the aspirations that have been set out in the sustainability strategy are enforced moving forwards. And in addition, condition 16, due to changes in the draft plan, is to be deleted because that referred to an adjacent site. And then, so moving on really, and to kind of conclude, obviously the update report talked a lot about supply, the supply of housing and the presumption position that we're in. It also referred to the site kind of continuing to be a draft allocation within the draft plan that was consulted on earlier on this year. And so in essence, what we're doing is we're considering now the harm against the benefits, and as previously set out in the committee report back in December, there is a landscape harm that's kind of clearly spelt out in that report. There's also the loss of agricultural land that would result. But then in contrast, the delivery of the 220 houses on the sites are both market and affordable, which would go some way to helping the council meet its supply of housing. There's also the park and bus element that would be coming forward, the wider active travel improvements, and the contributions towards a bus service in the area. And overall, the site itself is considered a suitable location for housing. When you consider the harm against the benefits, and taking into account also that the site is a draft allocation within the draft plan, overall it's considered that the application is acceptable and is recommended for grant subject to conditions and 106. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we turn to our speakers. The first speaker is Mr. Little. You have 3 minutes. If you'd like to come forward, please.
Right, Simon Thomas will tonight embellish planning officers and councillors who have granted planning permission on this site, which is the W6 site. Our picture should come up there. We're the W7 site. The planning authority is in presumption. Let's not kid ourselves here. You are in presumption. The reality is the National Planning Policy Framework is about delivery of homes, not about some idiotic test of a delivery. Simon says the site location of the W6 site conflicts with the adopted 2019 local plan. Yes, and the public agree. I agree. You've got that right, Simon. It does conflict, as did the Orbit, the Moat, the Harrier Lodge, and the Church Lane sites. They all were against public opinion, yet Andrew granted them on presumption. Now we're not in presumption, apparently. All outside the urban boundary. Now, the planning committee wanted to resolve the W6 site, Simon says, safeguarding conditions of a completion of a 106 legal agreement from the W6 is paramount. That's utter nonsense. Easy, simple solution is either get them to agree it, the 106, or refuse them planning permission, which you should have done if you didn't have a 106 agreement, which is what you did on our site. So one rule for one, another rule for somebody else. Now, on the 11th of March, a Topic 18 paper was published with a new plan. This is the 4th attempt at this. And they still not got it right. They're still now saying, let's add Bodkin Farm. Let's add Brooklands Farm. Let's have the Blean site for 1,400 homes. And what have the local public said? We don't want it. Are you listening? Or does it all go over your heads? Now, Christopher de Grusa says, there is no harm from the W6 site. Andrew says there's no harm from the W6 site. Well, it's next to the protected Ben Acre Woods. It's opposite the Ben Acre Woods. It's a grade A crop yielding piece of land. Ours has got horses pooing on it since 1906, for Christ's sake. But you don't want our site. You don't want social housing, which is what we proposed. 120 rentable, sociable houses, never to be sold. You councillors threw it out. Councillor Edwards has come up with a new plan. She wants Brooklands Farm. She wants Bodkin Farm. This site, our site, passed two SLAR assessments. 2017, 2019. The government planning inspector said it's a sustainable site. It's a site that is achievable. 2017, he published that. They still ignored that. Still continuing.
Mr. Little, could you wind up, please? Thank you. You've had just over, nearly half a minute over.
Well, OK, I appreciate that. I could be here all night with this. This is utter nonsense. Get real, you lot.
We move to the next speaker, is Peter Slaughter. You'll come up, please, and you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, councillors. I would like to draw your attention to the character and unsuitable location of this site. Please be in no doubt this is an extremely unpopular site. In the consultation for the first draft local plan, more people objected to this proposal than any proposed housing site in or near Canterbury. That's according to data on the council website. The site is one of 3 developments for the south of Whitstable in the first draft local plan as policy W4. More people objected to that policy than even the Canterbury Eastern Movement Corridor. So any Whitstable councillor voting to approve this scheme, please note your party will lose votes and probably seats at the next election. I hope you have all visited the site and appreciate that it is not just any old field. It is a wonderful, unique hilltop with inspiring views across the Thames estuary and inland to the Blean Woods. It is the last unspoiled rural viewpoint within easy walking distance for most Whitstable residents. Take it away and I do not think they will forgive you. This development, being on a hill, would be seen from Thanet Way and from Whitstable and the Blean Woods and their area of high landscape value. You will even see it from Herne Bay, especially at night when all the lights are on. No tree planting will prevent this, especially in winter when the leaves are off the trees. One councillor has asked, if we don't build here, where do we build? Perhaps in Barton Ward, where over 2,000 homes were planned in the first draft local plan. Not so many people objected to those sites as objected to the scheme you have in front of you. Barton is also closer to grammar schools and employment in Canterbury, making it more sustainable. Census data for South Whitstable shows that just 30% of working residents go to work in the Whitstable area. The vast majority commute to other areas such as Canterbury, Swale and London. So you don't need to build the houses here. There is no way that building on this site is justified, even to keep the council temporarily out of presumption. It would not comply with the council's landscape character assessment. The site is outside the urban area and its unsuitable location means plans would not be consistent with NPPF policies 135 and 180, nor adopted local plan policies SP4, HD4, T8 and LB11. So please do the right thing and refuse this application. Finally, nobody I know in Whitstable thinks that the park and ride idea is going to work. It is in the wrong place and not on the route into Whitstable. So it's not a valid reason to justify this application. Thank you.
Please, excuse me. Please, we are going to listen. What do we do?
Not when you've got planning permission. It's got planning permission.
The next speaker is Mr. Alan Nutton, and please could we all be quiet and listen to the speakers as they speak.
Good evening, councillors. I'm delighted this matter is before you again and officers report we are no longer in presumption. I hope this frees you to make decisions without fear of a presumption appeal. The site has been agricultural land during my 60 or so years experience of it. It affords views over the town and Whitstable Bay and is a skyline feature from parts of the town. A newspaper report of manoeuvres in 1910 described the site as an eminence which commands Whitstable from the landward side and on which a 5-hour battle was centred. This emphasises its prominence. Views over Boggs Hole Valley and Cloweswood can be gained from the southern edge of the site. To further emphasise its visual importance, it previously held a trigonometry point. This site is definitely green. By no stretch of the imagination might it be considered grey. As such, it does not fit government's priorities for their ambitious home building programme. As well as its agriculture and aesthetic importance, the site hosts a variety of wildlife. If, despite all of this, you approve this application, other matters must be considered. Road safety concerns were raised by the Whitstable Society and others at the meeting in December last. It seems to me these have worsened with greater congestion, especially when the A299 was closed. If this proposal is approved, congestion and air pollution will increase. As I previously said, I have particular concern about traffic using Millstreet Road, where footpaths and crossing points are inadequate, but used extensively by school children. Increased traffic and footfall would result from this proposal. Without significant improvement to pedestrian safety, there would be increased risk to life and limb. The officer's main point supporting approval of this site seems to be council is close to its minimum build target. I suggest rather than take an easy option, council should identify brown and grey options to stay ahead of re-imposition of presumption. Also, council rejected an application on the 5th of this month for 2 dwellings at an infill site less than a mile from this site. The officer's report said, the application site is located within the open countryside, outside the confines of any defined settlement. The development would result in the loss of open countryside, would cause a harmful urbanising effect on the rural area and would constitute an unsustainable form of development. The scheme is therefore in conflict with policies SP1, SP4, HD4, LB10 and DBE3 of the Canterbury District Local Plan and National Planning Policy Framework. If the quoted reasons are prohibitive for an infill of just 2 homes, surely you must also prohibit this proposal. Approving this application might be an easy option, but it's not the right one. Please recognise the strength and volume of public opposition evidenced by numerous comments made on the planning website and representations made at these meetings. The proposal should be rejected and focus shone on development at less green locations.
Thank you. Please could I call the next speaker, Richard Barrett, Whitstable Society. Thank you.
Chair, councillors, following last December's planning committee, the Whitstable Society felt that it had little choice but to raise a formal complaint about the committee report. This recommended approval without advising committee members about a highway safety problem, which had been clearly documented by Kent County Council Highways. We had drawn the planning officer's attention to this matter 4 months previously. We have also stressed there were material errors in the applicant's traffic modelling. We believe the planning committee was misled into voting to approve this application. The report written for today's planning committee is incorrect in respect of paragraph 9, which states that the issues we raised have either been fully considered or are not materially relevant. The safety issue affects pedestrians and cyclists crossing the road called Borstal Hill, where it approaches the Longreach roundabout. The problem dates to 2015, when a planning application was submitted for 400 houses at Whitstable Heights. KCC said they had concerns about adding traffic to a junction that was already broken. In the end, to increase the capacity of the roundabout, Borstal Hill was widened to allow the extra lane of southbound traffic. As local residents can tell you, this has made it more intimidating and more hazardous for pedestrians, and particularly disabled pedestrians, to cross in peak periods. Many of these pedestrians are children walking and cycling to and from school, and at a time when traffic levels are highest. KCC Highways Improvement Team acknowledged the problem last year, as shown in comments on planning application CA 23777. The present application will exacerbate the problem by increasing the amount of traffic and increasing the number of pedestrians crossing. This is just the latest of a series of planning applications that exacerbate the problem, but it is the first such application since we learnt of KCC's safety concerns. We don't see why you can't agree with KCC Highways and say to the developer, we're sorry, There is already a safety problem documented at the roundabout, and your development will make it unacceptably worse. So we can't permit this application unless you provide mitigation. This would be consistent with the National Planning Policy Framework, and it would be consistent with the adopted Canterbury Transport Strategy, which states that the measure for pedestrians should be considered before providing for road traffic. If this matter is not resolved, it is likely formal complaints against the council will be referred to the complaints officer and, if necessary, the local government ombudsman. As regards the erroneous traffic modelling submitted by the developers in this application, you don't need to be a modelling expert to see there is a problem when the applicants claim that adding traffic to the Longreach roundabout will reduce the length of today's traffic queues. This issue must be corrected to give a credible estimate of the impact of the development will have on congestion. Thank you. Thank you.
And thank you. Please could I call the next speaker, Neil Boddy, Thanet Way Residents Association. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Chair, councillors, I'm speaking on behalf of the Thanet Way Residents Association. We find that the proposed development is unsustainable on multiple counts and so strongly object to it. Everyone who lives in Whitstable and many who live in Herne Bay and beyond use the old Thanet Way day to day. We know it is a really critical transport route which is getting busier and busier with frequent queuing seen now. The site is currently outside the urban boundary and is on the fringe land of the old Thanet Way, which was specifically designed not to be built on as part of the traffic scheme that brought us the new Thanet Way bypass. As part of this scheme, the council sought to avoid the return of the damaging build-up of traffic on the old Thanet Way, and not building on this site, on which today there is a presumption against development, was one of the explicit control measures to protect against traffic build-up, which would be immensely damaging to the sustainability prospects of Whitstable. The intent of that scheme is very clear, and so are the consequences of sleepwalking into what it was designed to avoid. It makes no sense to overturn all this sound reasoning with a piecemeal development when not even in presumption. While this site is included in the new emerging local plan, it is important to note that this plan is still in the early stages of consultation. Prioritising the emerging plan at this point would effectively undermine and disregard the ongoing public consultation process. The location remains unsustainable and out of alignment with the current local plan. Essential services like primary schools and the train station are all more than 25 minutes walk. This exceeds sustainability guidelines. Bus services for this area are sparse. Pedestrian routes are at best poor. KCC has acknowledged safety concerns about pedestrian routes at the Borstal Hill roundabout, and no solution is proposed. Adding traffic and increasing pedestrian movements without addressing these safety concerns would be negligent. The Park and Bus brings new traffic into the urban boundary. This contradicts the goals of the bypass scheme. That is irrational, particularly given the local circumstances. And this development is not even providing a 300-space car park nor a bus. This burden is left to CCC to sort out. The sewage works needs upgrading, not just the pipe work to it, so surely it will be remiss to proceed without the environmental impact being understood. So in summary, we ask you to reject this application on the grounds that the site is outside the urban boundary of the existing local plan, on a site that is currently unsustainable and will be contrary to the design of the bypass scheme that brought us the new Thanet Way. And although the site has been put forward for the new local plan, it cannot be concluded that it will be carried forward. The site needs to be looked at in the wider context holistically, particularly in terms of traffic and pedestrian safety, or we could be left with even more traffic, no more buses, and no solutions, with both existing and new residents suffering. Please reject this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we move on to the final speaker, Victoria Groves, the applicant? Thank you.
Good evening, Chair, councillors. It is not the intention to repeat the detail within the comprehensive report prepared and presented by your officers. However, there are a number of matters which I would like to highlight to the committee today. This development will deliver green homes. We have committed to delivering homes which will meet the Future Home Standard in advance of the 2025 scheduled government timetable. This means the homes will be all electric and will be fitted with solar panels, air source heat pumps, A-grade appliances, EV charging facilities and rainwater harvesting devices, a commitment now recognised in the proposed conditions. The development will deliver much-needed policy-compliant affordable housing. The new homes will be set within a green and lush environment which encourage walking and cycling and provides direct connections onto the local bus and public footpath network to assist with easy access to nearby key facilities and the town centre. This development will deliver off-site highway works which have been agreed with KCC and the council, and this will include upgrading 1.5 kilometres of footway along Thanet Way to provide a 3-metre wide shared footway cycleway, along with funding to provide additional improvements to the pedestrian and cycle linkages to the town centre. We're also funding the local bus service and providing a new bus stop. There will be a new regular bus service which will provide access to nearby facilities, railway station and the town centre. The on-site green open space accounts for over 40% of the total site. The proposals will provide both equipped and informal areas of play, as well as important green infrastructure to achieve 26% biodiversity net gain. These proposals will provide community benefits for both the existing and new residents. There is a proposed 400 square metre area that can accommodate either a new local shop or a community facility. There's also new allotments to meet identified local need. The proposals also include the provision of land for the future 300-space park and bus facility. This is a long-standing ambition of the council and is referenced in the adopted local plan. This car park will form part of a wider strategic transport strategy to assist with alleviating congestion in the town centre. Visitors to Whitstable will be encouraged to park at the car park and catch the bus into town. There is also the opportunity to provide bike hire facilities to take advantage of the improved cycle connections and linkages to the Crab and Winkle Way. We believe this application will deliver high-quality homes within an attractive green environment, as well as provide much-needed affordable homes and genuine community benefits. Thank you for listening, and we respectfully request you support your officer's recommendation and approve the application. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the speakers on this item. I would like to move that we grant planning permission and follow the officer's recommendation, subject to the conditions set out at the report at Annex 1 and a legal agreement being made under Section 106 of the Town and Country Planning Act 1990. I also think that the two conditions that we added last time, which the applicants have confirmed are still part of the plan, should be outlined in any agreement to move forward. And that was to change condition 32, requiring an ecological enhancement plan to be amended so that the details submitted to the council for approval demonstrate 20% biodiversity net gain will be achieved. And condition 35, relating to the submission of an energy strategy, to be amended so it reflects the commitment by the developer to achieve net zero homes. I say this at this stage because these were conclusions we reached last time, and we might as well start from that point. Clearly there is a debate to be had. We've heard the public speakers, but do I have a seconder for the officer's recommendation? Thank you, Paul Prentice, seconded. So please, could I open the debate on this item? Could I hear from Councillor Smith? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I am concerned still, and I know the planning officers have heard me say this lots and lots of times, and it's not the only application before us this evening, that my concerns about the crossing at Borstal Hill and Clapham Hill are not sufficient pedestrian crossings. We are not prioritising pedestrians with these developments. And I am concerned because KCC are saying it's fine, but they also say it's not safe to put a crossing on Clapham Hill or Borstal Hill. But children and adults, I mean, children are going to school and they're crossing, and it's just not right. And I think I would like this committee to talk to KCC about we need to have something radical change here. I mean, it's just, I think we are opening ourselves up for people being knocked over, basically, because we'd be putting, it says in here that nearby you've got other shops and health facilities, but you have to cross at Clapham Hill. If you get off the bus service, which is the 400, which was the triangle, if you want to come home from work, you've got to cross over Clapham Hill. Increasingly, it's becoming a real problem. And we've got the Moat development, and we have got the Orbit development, and now further along. So I am very concerned. And I want KCC to really recognise that this is an urgent issue and an urgent problem.
Thank you. Please, could we not have contributions from the side? Thank you. Councillor Stockley.
Thank you, Chair. I would like, if possible, for the officers to outline the tricky position we are in regarding KCC and highways. Our speakers tonight have mentioned roads on more than one occasion, including pedestrian crossings, as we just heard. As I understand it, and I stand to be corrected, we are not the Highways Authority. We cannot take much of the highway network into account when considering planning applications. There are certain magic words that KCC have to use regarding the quantity of traffic and the state of those roads. If I hear any more from you, I shall leave. Please be quiet.
Keep up, mate. They're consolidating KCC highway.
I'm sorry, Mr. Little, please, will you stop talking? If you, Mr. Little, if you are not going to stop talking, you will have to, excuse me, Mr. Little, if you don't stop talking, you will have to leave.
You may have noticed, Mr. Little.
Mr. Little.
Stop me coming to the topic, mate. So you carry on.
Mr. Little, if you don't be quiet, you will have to leave. Do you want to leave?
You made me. I still had another reply from your legal department. Or you.
Right, what do we do next? Mr. Little, please would you leave? I think you're going to be disruptive and continue to be disruptive. We would like to do this in an orderly...
This is a debate by the committee. It is not.
I know. Mr. Little, this is not an open forum. You've had your 3 minutes. Mr. Little, it doesn't matter whether you finished. And this forum is for the councillors now to debate this item. Mr. Little, you are going to have to leave. So, Mr. Little, you're going to have to leave. Please, would you do so now?
Mr. Little, you've been asked by the chair to Mr. Little, this is not an occasion where it's an open discussion. It's a planning committee. It's a planning committee, and you really need to give the councillors.
You're all talking utter nonsense. That site, W7, has...
Thank you, Mr. Little. Thank you, Mr. Little. Mr. Little, you. Mr. Little.
Mr. Little. Councillor Stockley.
Thank you, Chair. As I was saying, I would like some advice. I wasn't offering an opinion, but yeah, as I understand it, the position of the highways on this application is something that KCC would need to agree with. And as it transpires, they don't agree with what has been said by our speakers. Could the officer clarify? Thank you.
Yes, before I ask Andrew Gamble to clarify and comment on this, and maybe Simon wants to come in, is there anything else on this issue? Because I do remember there were quite a lot of contributions on the traffic matter, and a couple of actions were added to the minutes last time. We can follow those through in discussion at some point. But if we're happy for Councillor Stockley's question to be answered first, yes? Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Councillor Stockley. So with every application, we obviously consult KC Highways and they consider the highway safety impacts that result on a proposal in terms of traffic generation, pedestrian movements, cyclist movements, etc. One of the key comments that's been brought up tonight is obviously around the Borstal Hill roundabout and there being a crossing in that position. So KCC Highways, I showed it on a red line earlier about the widening to that particular improvement. So they requested those widening works along that particular network. They didn't request a crossing on Borstal Hill. And as part of the previous application, I think it was referred to earlier, KCC Highways did separately consider, installing a crossing in that position, but for various reasons related to kind of pedestrian flow, the availability of highways land to the side and the proximity to the roundabout, that previous application allowed essentially the removal of a condition that kind of requested a crossing in that position. So it has been considered before, and KCC Highways have looked at it, and as part of this specific application, they didn't request a crossing in that position. It is worth noting that there is a crossing currently being installed at, I think it was referred to the Orbit development, the Montpellier development, which obviously will allow people to cross over and make way to Rake Hill in a separate manner. But for the purposes of this application, KCC Highways considered all of the impacts and didn't consider, the traffic generation or the impact on pedestrians as in any way unacceptable. So, yeah, that's hopefully answered some of your questions.
Thank you, Chair. May I just briefly come back?
Yes.
Yeah, basically all I'm saying is that while I understand what you've just said, it puts us in a slightly awkward position because the public perception is that we are able to dismiss or refuse this application on the grounds of highway congestion, public safety, crossings, etc. But as we are not the consultee, or we are not the authority, Highways Authority, any such decision based on those grounds would not stand the test. Am I right?
KCC Highways are the kind of expert consultants that we rely on in terms of highways, so we wouldn't typically make a recommendation against the decision that they've taken on an application.
Do I have any other contributions? Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Officer, for your report and also to our public speakers. The NPPF states achieving sustainable development, paragraph 8. There's 3 items, A, B and C, and for me, this fails 2 of those. And one of them is the right land in the right place. For me, this is not either of those. And environmental as well. It's not an effective use of agricultural land to build houses on, not this particular piece of land. Anyway, that's in my opinion. And as it states in the NPPF, you've got agricultural land. What's the effective use on it? Well, grow crops on it. That's what you should be doing with it, not building this particular estate I'm not a NIMBY, I'm not somebody who doesn't want housing. I understand we need housing, we really do need housing, but just not here. I think it's inappropriate, not just the KCC, what colleagues have spoken tonight regarding the roads. We were a loss of ancient woodland. I said it's grade 3 agricultural land. I mean, we also got on our own documentation, the SP4 development directed to urban areas. This is not an urban area, this is a rural area, which is going to be turning into and gradually swallowed to become an urban area. It's a wonderful site. I know it fairly well. I used to live in Whitstable for many years and used to live at St Andrews Close, and I could look across the downs and see it, and it's still standing to this very day. For me, I cannot support this the officer's recommendation. This is a prime piece of land, and it almost feels to me like that last little bit of chunk on that bit of road, and Whitstable is just hemmed. I don't live in Whitstable. I'm not a NIMBY. I used to. It's just not the right application. The bus thing I don't get, living in the area where people are, in my opinion, are not going to drive to there to catch a bus to go into Whitstable. I just don't see that working. I don't understand how that kind of comes together. I understand the words of it, obviously, but I don't understand how we're going to direct 300 people or whatever the number would be to catch a bus into the town. So for me, for building, I'm not saying that the quality of the houses they're offering, and I like, to be honest, the sustainability, what was mentioned earlier by the speaker regarding the types of properties and going electric. I understand all of that, but this is, for me, not the place to put them on, and I can't support the application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Mackenzie.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I want to touch on one of the more drier points. So, like, it does say in the report that this has been brought to committee because it departs from the local plan because it's not in the urban area. And I saw that the justification for that was because it was directly adjacent to the urban area and had good public transport links. But I'm not completely reassured by that, to be honest. It sounds like you've just gone, it's right next to it, so that's good enough. And I worry about whether that sets a precedent for future. And I wonder if the officer could just comment on that and provide some more reassurance that it does fit with the local plan, because I don't think that's strong enough personally.
Yes, go on, Simon. Simon Thomas will address.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, you're right. I mean, the fact is it's outside the settlement. It's not identified in the current local plan, but it is identified in the emerging local plan. And there's a lot of evidence which was being put together to select that site as one of the future sites to come forward in the next version of the local plan. We're not in presumption, so you could refuse the application, but the fact is the clear direction from government, previous governments and more so the current government, is very much about building the houses that are needed for local communities, including affordable housing. And as you've heard tonight, this development would deliver that, but also it delivers high quality development. They're pushing ahead in terms of the design characteristics of the development. And also, again, we're out of presumption, but really only just. It is highly likely that we'll be back in presumption again very soon. We know our housing delivery test would fall below the required standards. So as soon as the government publishes those results, assuming they do, then we'd be back in presumption. And at the end of the day, the whole point of planning is to deliver economic, social and environmental benefit, or to take all those matters into account in approving growth. And we need to deliver housing for people in the local area who need that housing, both affordable housing and market housing. And we know the impacts if we don't, in terms of the cost of housing increasing and the availability and people's living conditions becoming worse and worse. So there is a lot of reason to grant permission for this site, and principally, as I say, to take into account the fact that it's in the draft local plan and it has been identified as a future housing site.
Councillor Smith first, Councillor Menish, and Councillor Bothwell, and then Councillor Stockley.
Thank you. Perhaps to avoid confusion, we should say Councillor Dan Smith, as Naomi has also spoken. But I'm somewhat in tune with Councillor Jones in the sense that, and also Councillor Mackenzie's worry about it being outside the designated area. It is outside the designated urban area. I think one of the speakers referred to this as being very close to the area, as a nice area to walk through. It's the last bit of rural land near to the Whitstable residents, and I hear that it's something which is difficult to lose. And I think the NPPF says along particularly section 180, which I think was referred to by that particular speaker, that where there is biodiversity and a significant harm to biodiversity resulting from development, that's not great. And also that you need, in the local plan, it does mention that we have green corridors and connectivity, which I think this is a loss of both of those things. This is a green area that brings us close to to Whitstable, to its boundaries. It gets us closer to the beach and in this particular area. But in the other direction, it does, as was mentioned, connect close to Clowes Woods. On the other side of the coin, I think the developer mentioned very well about the eco side of the property, and obviously we do need a certain number of houses. I have some qualms about the reasoning behind the number of houses in this area. I mean, I think a very recent update I saw on development in Hersden suggested that 51% of the houses that were built in the last development were housed from people who don't live in the area. One of the speakers mentioned that only 30% of the people work in Whitstable, the rest travel. That I find uncomfortable. It suggests to me that the houses are being built in the wrong locations. And I think the loss of green area like this on that basis is a poor way to behave from a long-term view and a constructive view of the whole planning structure of an area like this that has good connectivity to a lovely town, Whitstable, through to the Blean, and on the other side and through the green gap between Herne Bay and Whitstable, to actually make a connective area for an environmental purposes. So I'm having some difficulty supporting this, but not because the housing itself is bad. I heard that, it was good. It's just in the wrong place, my feeling. Anyway, I will let other speakers see.
Thank you. Councillor Mellish.
Thank you, Chair. Similar theme, I suppose, in terms of much has been made about affordable housing at this site. But given the upgrading, to some extent, the environmental upgrading that these houses have been given, I assume these are not going to be cheap properties. That the upgrades are going to reflect the prices of the houses. Therefore, do you have any indication of what actually affordable means in this case? There's not a single mention about social housing, which I'm sure most people on this side of the House at least would be indicating that we would want as part of any development. And there's nothing about that in this proposal. I am concerned that, just as Councillor Smith has indicated, that people buying these houses will be from out of town as well, out of the area, because they can afford the affordable housing, inverted commas. And they won't actually be local people who, certainly in the Herne Bay area, are below, in many cases, the national average in terms of earnings.
I just want to remind everybody that the full report that we considered in December is still part of this report, and it covers affordable housing on page 34, paragraphs 38, 39, 40 and 41. And there is the normal 30%, and that is split between the first homes, affordable housing, rent, and so on, as usual. So that section still applies as well. And the other thing I just want to say is that, we are talking about 20% biodiversity net gain. So although our, agricultural land may be used, if we get the biodiversity net gain, then obviously we are getting that improved biodiversity as a result of the way that the development is going to be designed and built. Can I now ask Councillor Bothwell? Oh, did you want to come back?
Sorry, Chair, you misinterpreted what I'm saying. Sorry, Chair. I have no doubt about the breakup even, of how the house is going to be divided in terms of affordable, etc. That's not my question. The question is how affordable are those affordable homes going to be, given the nature of the developments. Perhaps I'm presuming, but I make a presumption that many people will not be able to afford those affordable houses. And I don't see anywhere within this report of how it's going to reflect the housing needs. And there's what we have over 4,000 people on our waiting list. How that's going to be affected by this affordable housing.
Well, there is a formula for that, and it's all there in the report. So, for example, first homes, I think I'm right in saying, are capped at 250,000. You know, the rent is also capped on the social housing, and if you want a bit more, Simon's going to add something. Why don't you?
Yeah, the 106 would also include a nomination agreement, which means that the affordable rented housing, which will be taken on by a housing association, the council can allocate and put people forward from our housing waiting list. So it will have a benefit to that list and those people who are waiting in need of housing.
Thank you. Councillor Bothwell.
Thank you, Chair. When this came to committee in December, I voted in favour of it. I was particularly impressed by the zero carbon building designs and other sustainability features. But now that it is, we're no longer under presumption, I have reviewed it. I visited the site today and I could see that it's a very, even though it's adjacent to the rest of Whitstable, it's very isolated physically by the Old Thanet Way, which is a very fast road. I tried to cross it. It was extremely difficult. And I think that the infrastructure for pedestrians and cyclists is really not adequate. Notwithstanding, I mean, in addition to the problems with Borstal Hill, I think there are significant problems along the Old Thanet Way itself and the connectivity between the site and the rest of Whitstable. I think one Pelican crossing, which is promised, I think, would be inadequate because people, especially young people, will be inclined to take the shortcuts and avoid the Pelican crossing, which would be highly dangerous. So I think you would need to make this site viable. From that point of view, you need to re-engineer the whole Thanet of the Old Thanet Way to slow the whole thing down and have lots, several crossings. So I don't think it's viable from that point of view, and I don't think it fits in with the council's declared active travel plan, which is for people to move to cycles and to walking. It's not. I don't think it's going to work for that site. It's just too isolated. So I don't think I can support it. Thank you.
I think I will ask the officer to come back on the detail of what is being proposed, because there's obviously the widening of the path that we've heard about. It's not a Pelican crossing, it's a toucan crossing. Remember, we had some discussion about that, because that is much better, because it's a walking and cycling one and much bigger. And there is the pathways down into the town. But let me ask Andrew Gambrell to come back and give you a little more detail. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Bothwell. So, as part of the proposals, toucan crossing is to be installed, as Councillor Edwards referred to. That's going to be in the position of the public right-of-way that runs across from the Whitstable Heights site at the moment to this site. As part of the roundabout works, so the works essentially to construct that fourth arm into the development, there are also island crossings proposed as part of that. So it's not solely the crossing that was referred to, I think, earlier on in my presentation, but there are also these other crossings that are looking to be introduced as part of the actual access works into the site. So yeah, that's kind of really as far as I can go in terms of the crossing points and the connectivity onto that northern side of the Old Thanet Way. But just to reassure you, there are kind of multiple crossing points rather than just the isolated one. Thanks.
Councillor Buckman.
Yeah, just a couple of things just to answer. I noticed someone spoke earlier about it was either going to be a community hub or a shop there was space for. Is it an either or would there be both? Would there be, just a couple of other things. Would the air source heat pumps and the solar panels, would they be on the affordable housing as well? Because obviously sometimes in developments, that sort of housing doesn't have that, they're sort of missed off. And then it's just to touch on really what Councillor Naomi Smith said earlier about crossings, because obviously I fear that KCC's traffic modelling is based on the amount of traffic rather than like the speed of it. And being like electric cars, they're silent basically, and they accelerate a lot quicker now. And I just don't think that's why we need proper crossings to help basically. And I'm not sure if they take that into account. I think that's it.
Thank you. Councillor Stockley.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me back. I quite agree with Robert Jones. This isn't a question of the quality of the build of the houses, which is unusual, in my opinion. This is a good quality development as far as the finished products will be concerned. My problem is the land it's sitting on or due to sit on. Now, I drive down the Thanet Way, and you could argue that I shouldn't be driving, but the tree line that is shown on the right-hand side as you head from Herne Bay is akin to a sculpture in my view. It's a fantastic line of trees and it stands out for miles. Now that's an odd thing to say in a planning meeting, but it lifts the heart. You know, if it had been developed as a sculpture, we would not be allowed to build anything on it. You know, they're that important as a feature on the skyline. I am aware from my part in the working group on the new plan how difficult it is to find suitable land to build on. And in fact, when this came to committee in December last, we were asked, I asked, if we can't build it here, where are we going to build it? You know, this is top quality land. It's a fantastic bit of open space, but we need the houses. You know, they've got to go somewhere. I'm struggling, to be honest. I like the houses, but I don't like the position. Thank you.
Councillor Prentice.
Thank you, Chair. I want to be consistent with my vote in December. I do still struggle with this application in terms of what I would call, I suppose, its permeability with the rest of the sort of Whitstable urban area. My comments back in December were primarily around transport, and obviously quite a lot of the comments from the committee were around transport and highways issues. I did make a big point about bus services being available from the occupation of the first house, and that is reflected in the report. And I know we had quite a discussion about the speed limit on the old Thanet Way. I want to make a few comments about the site, though. And I think we have to be clear that this isn't part of a green belt. It doesn't legally exist as green belt. It's not grey belt either. It's certainly not brownfield. But it is greenfield, and we are needing to build homes. I agree with all the comments that other people on this committee have made about the quality of the housing, and I think that's undeniable. I think the greatest anxieties, from what I've heard in the room tonight, are around the traffic levels, and I don't think anyone can disagree with those. I'm still quite sort of in two minds about it, but you know, I want to be consistent with how I voted last year, and I don't think that would be honest to go against an earlier vote. But I do want to see the best development possible if we need to build on this site.
Are there any other contributions? Yeah, Councillor Thomas.
If this application is refused, where do we think we're going to be with the inspectorate, please?
I was just checking where we think this might go if that happens. It's awkward because we're in and out of presumption. I think we've probably all realised that now. We've been told in this report that although we might be out of it now, which is why we have to reconsider it, we're not very sure where we're going to be in the next few months when the next figures come out. And of course, while we've quoted the MPPF, we're also expecting some changes to that, and it doesn't sound like those changes will be hardening. It will be awkward, and maybe, I mean, we can't predict exactly what will happen, but we would expect an appeal. You know, we've already, you know, passed this. This is in the future plan. That will then be out of our hands. Of course, we wanted to have some conditions. You've heard me say this before, but I'm always happier when we can do that. Speaking from the chair, I don't know whether... Simon, have you got anything to add? I'll just ask if Simon's got anything to add as Head of Planning.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, what you said was absolutely right. If we look to refuse it, I suspect, well, the applicant will definitely consider their options on appealing against non-determination. So that will basically mean that our decision won't be delivered. They will appeal to the inspectorate because we haven't decided the application. That will be an option available to them. And of course, then we do anticipate that at some point soon we'll be back in presumption, and it probably will be when that appeal is running, in which case the inspector is very unlikely, I think, to dismiss an appeal, given that we've made a decision as a council previously on the basis of being in presumption. I mean, we know with the housing delivery tests, the figures that we've submitted to government show that we fail that test, but we are not in presumption until the government publishes those figures. Now, they normally publish them in December. They delayed this year for various reasons. Assuming the new government still apply the housing delivery test, then we know when those figures are published, we will be in presumption, as a matter of fact. So it does put us in rather an awkward situation because of the fact we're going in and out of presumption. That's really it, the uncertainty of when we're in and when we'll be in, when we'll be out, and so on. And that probably will clash with any appeal timetable as well. So, yeah, not any more than that, really.
I think we do have to think this through very carefully because we know there are other applications in the pipeline for sites that may come forward before we finally agree this current forward plan. And that's partly because, of course, as you all know, we've delayed it due to wanting to change certain important things. So everybody we need to be really clear that people have understood where we are with this and where it might go. It was a very good question, Councillor Thomas, thank you. Now I think Naomi Smith and then Dan Smith want to speak. Naomi first.
Thank you, Chair. It's actually what one of the speakers said about preempting the local plan, and I wanted some clarification about that, where we stand with that, because this site was in the previous iteration of the local plan, before in the last administration. It's also in this iteration of the draft local plan, but the draft local plan hasn't been agreed and finalised. So I just wonder where we sit, because are we preempting how the local plan is going to be when we haven't decided it? So I wanted to get a bit of clarification. Thank you.
And Dan Smith, can you speak and then we'll take both questions, or if...
Yeah, just a couple of things. Thank you, Chair. The first was Greenbelt was mentioned, I think, by Councillor Prentice. I believe Greenbelt's not applicable to Canterbury area, but I just like that confirmed. It's for big urban areas like London. Also, I think the I think I've forgotten what I was going to say now. So just on that point, if we could stick with that and then answer the questions, that'd be helpful. Thank you.
Just give me 1 second. everybody, hold on. I mean, the issue about preempting the local plan is complicated because we're not yet at a stage where it has huge amount of weight because it hasn't gone to the next level, Reg 19. But this site has survived 2 iterations. And, you know, the working group will be reconvening shortly. So we know where we are with it. We can't say more. I think it was all we can do on that one. And we don't have green belt, Councillor Dan Smith. We don't, I mean, in this district. I mean, we have, you know, areas of natural beauty and all the... Sorry? Sevenoaks is the nearest, nowhere near us. But the other thing I just wanted to mention, and I know I've made this point about other sites, and somebody in the introductions speaker said, why aren't the houses in Barton? Well, plenty of houses are being built in Barton. And I'm the ward councillor there, but that's not really relevant. It's just to say that, you know, most of that is agricultural land. Unfortunately, despite lots of contributions from people on what brownfield land we've got to build on, it's very limited. That is basically our problem. And so, you know, I think what we're looking at here is greenfield, but so are we looking at that with most of the other strategic sites. Councillor Dan Watkins. Dan Smith, sorry, what did I say?
Yes.
Oh, did I? Sorry,
You kind of cut me off at the
I got
Dan.
distracted, but I've already made the point about biodiversity net gain, so I won't make it again. Dan Smith, thank you.
Yeah, sorry, I remembered what I meant to say earlier on. It was several, I think Simon Thompson and also yourself and several others have alluded it to the what the government may or may not do. Always, I think, slightly in the negative tone. I think part of the issue is that there is also a counter to that in that there is a positive potential and we don't know. For example, the demographics reports on the number of people would show, we're using figures from, I think, 2014, am I correct? And the latest figures are 2023, something like that. If we use the 2023 figures, the population estimate is less, so we would need less housing. There are various sort of factors like that. I think one of the others is that for what the government have alluded to in terms of where they wanted their housing was to build closer to where people actually need the housing. And I think the point I made earlier on about the 51% in the Hersden development that was constructed not living near the area where those houses were built kind of illustrates the point, and that was from a developer who said that after they'd sold the houses, that the potential in Canterbury and in other areas is that the need for the housing is not as great as the figures that have been applied by the previous government would suggest, and that therefore the driver for the way these things are going may be different. I agree that it may also be a negative, as was alluded to by you both, and it would take that tone, but there is no certainty of that. We don't actually know yet. There's no clear steer. So I think it would be a case of we need to vote on this one based on the discussion now and not worry about what the government will think, because they're going to get to that and tell us within the next few months, I hope. Thank you.
I mean, I don't want to preempt a discussion that the working group will have again because of the points that you've made and others have made about housing numbers. But we did have a parliamentary answer through our MP on the fact that the ONS figures can't kick in till at least 2025. It's just how long it takes for the new census to be processed. So that's why we're not relying on that, and we couldn't rely on that, and we still won't be able to. So it doesn't matter what the government, you know, of the day says, as it were, because the previous government was, was happy to update the figures, but the censuses take 2 or 3 years to come through. Then they test out a new model, and that will be probably, as I say, 2025. So we won't be getting a new formula within the lifespan of this current local plan. That we've got that as a definitive answer. There's lots of other things we can ask about those kinds of things, but just to say, that speculation is not for this, and we have got an answer on the timescale.
I heard what you said, but you mentioned the word speculation, and I think the Persimmon development, where they literally stated that only 49% of the people who bought those houses came from within the locality, the nearby area, and 51% from elsewhere. It was mentioned several times, I think, or at least once, that the people who live in Whitstable travel elsewhere for a significant number, travel elsewhere, whatever the number may be, for work and things. They've moved, and that suggests that they've moved, or their workplaces is separate from their home place, and that's not generally the way people would prefer to live. And I think it's so there is some evidence. It is not pure speculation.
And I really have to say that it's not actually relevant to the application. So, and also I didn't think 10 kilometres was very far, actually. And it was only within 10 kilometres that they were making that assessment of local. Anyway, Councillor Stockley.
Promise the last interjection. Would it be appropriate for the officers to give us an indication of what the financial costs might be if this was refused and indeed was appealed against? I will accept a no on that one.
No, because we don't know how it would play out, so that would be really speculative.
But would it be true to say that there may be a significant cost if we're found to be in error on this?
We just don't really know. As I say, I think, there is the issue that we would then lose control of it. And, at the moment we're in a good place with this. But on the other hand, everybody has their own view and obviously their own vote. If there's nobody else, shall I repeat the proposal? So I would like to go to the vote on the proposal that we accept the officer's recommendation. This is to grant planning permission subject to the conditions set out in the report at Annex 1 and a legal agreement being made under Section 106 of the Town and Country Planning Act 1990. And also that we have the condition 32 requires an ecological enhancement plan, which is amended to say that 20% biodiversity net gain will be achieved on this site. And condition 35 is amended relating to the submission of an energy strategy so that it reflects the commitment by the developer to achieve net zero homes. We did have a couple of informatives at that meeting. We could revisit those depending on what we now choose to vote. So Paul, you are still able to second that? Thank you, that's Paul Prentice. Can we go to the vote, Andrea? Thank you.
So that has fallen with 3 voting yes, 7 voting no, and 1 abstention.
Thank you very much, everybody. Are there people who came for that item who would like to leave now? I'll have a short break. I'll have a break till past so that everybody can leave the hall room who wishes to. Just a moment. We just need to assess where we've got to with this, as to whether there wasn't a proposal on the floor to reject, but we need to discuss the position we're in. Hold on a minute. Councillors, and people may want to wait and hear. Oh yes, sorry, Peter Old. I think we're actually going to have to deal with this in another way. So I'm sorry, but you need to leave again. In the absence of anybody wishing, or so far wishing to propose to refuse this application, and we haven't had that so far, I would suggest that the major concerns about this are transport, although I do hear the point about the location being quite strong. But if it is the mind of the committee to think about a deferment, I would propose that on the basis that we want to hear more about the highways position and talk about transport and talk about the links, what the developers are proposing, but mainly from KCC, because there are so many concerns about all of that. We could take that as a way forward today. So I will propose that from the chair, that we defer to get more information on highways from KCC and to see whether there are any further negotiations on any.
In the past, we've voted against proposals that come to this committee, and we've never been in a position that had to be a proposal to reject. I cannot recall at all that if we do vote against something, it's voted against and it falls. I don't see anything else in our proposal. I see what you're trying to achieve, but I don't know the objection with the sense of objection, but it doesn't seem procedurally right.
David, Thomas, would you like to comment first, and then I'll ask Kath to come in. Thank you.
Yes, every time you have an application that goes to refuse, you have to have a reason to refuse it. That's just how it is. The difference is now, because you've had from the chair a proposal, and that's been seconded. Now you have to go to a reason to refuse, and that now has to be voted on. And that's what we've done in the past. Correct me if I'm wrong. I've done it for, I don't know, 9 years now. So it's just slightly different because you're proposing from the chair.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. So Kath Warren will give us a legal opinion.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Basically, the Chair put forward the recommendation of the officer, which was to approve. That fell. And so there's no recommendation, there's no motion at the moment. What Councillor Thomas alluded to was that if someone comes in with a motion to refuse, they would then need to have reasons that we could, reasonable reasons that we could fight on an appeal. What the chair has done is, instead of, because there's no one that has come forward in that discussion and said, I will put forward a motion to refuse if it fails, what she has done is said, well, bearing in mind the concerns that she has heard, maybe if the committee are of a mind to do so, she would put a motion forward to defer for those matters to be looked at. And so that's where we are at the moment. And she would need a seconder if that was going to continue.
So do I have a seconder?
Second.
Thank you, Councillor Prentice. Councillor Stockley.
Thank you very much, Chair. While I accept what you're trying to achieve and see the reasoning behind it, I feel that personally, I've sat through many large developments. We've looked at KCC, and to be frank, I found KCC's modelling decidedly unhelpful. You know, we can go back, we can defer this, we can ask KCC to look again. It is our job to get the best we can for our residents, and I accept all of that. But at the end of the day, we have made a decision. We're not happy with this development as it stands. Whether it will be sufficient to remodel the traffic flows, etc. You know, we've been speaking about traffic on 2 occasions. It's come to this committee, and on both occasions, traffic has been a major issue. Pedestrian safety, transport links, 20 minutes walk to the nearest train station, bicycles. You know, none of these have been addressed, to be frank, or not sufficiently in this committee's view. Is it worth postponing this yet again so KCC can fiddle with it a bit and come back? I don't know. I personally don't feel it is.
Anybody else wish to comment? I think we just go to a vote then if there's no other comments. Thank you, Andrea.
Could you just clarify exactly what we're voting on, please?
So defer this for further clarification from KCC and probably discussions with the planning officer and developer on transport issues. I mean, we've got what's been raised in the meeting, so we know. Okay.
Okay. So that has also fallen with 3 in favour, 7 against and 1 abstention.
Just one moment, please, before we have a break. Just a second. This is quite a difficult situation because obviously we know that the situation is a likely appeal. I think what we haven't, as we haven't got a proposal to refuse this application, what we do have to have are your reasons articulated so that if we are in that next stage, we know what it is that fundamentally people have made their decision on the basis of, because otherwise we're in abeyance and we haven't got our reasons articulated. So could 1 or 2 people attempt to summarise in a succinct way the reasoning? So I do mean succinct because we have to be extremely clear about what reasons we would be wanting to put forward from this committee. Thank you. Councillor Dan Smith.
I think in the local plan it is outside. It was quite clearly stated a couple of times. It's outside the urban area, so that's I think in the old local plan that we're currently operating under and would stand the test. The MPPF was mentioned a couple of times. I think 180A and C, is it something like that? I think which is the green areas up there. In the local plan as well, the open spaces areas, there's no specific point in the open spaces area which would meet this particular development, at least not one that I saw in the wording. But if you read that section, there are several points where it goes against the spirit of that section of the local plan, in terms of it being a connective area of biodiverse, and I think that was also mentioned, and is certainly one of the key points for me, that it is very close to the Blean. It is, it's although it has the Thanet Way separating it, is a very green area, and it is also very proximate to Whitstable, which I think one of the speakers or two of the speakers mentioned, that it is a nice area to walk through. So I'm not exactly sure. Perhaps Simon would be able to advise on the way that would be best placed in.
Away and write a report based on those reasons. So what are reasons for what the refusal?
You've got the MPPF.
Yeah. So we'll go away and assess that and come back with a report next month, which says if you want to refuse it, this is the basis on which we recommend you do it.
You'd actually bring the whole thing back for that.
It'll be a covering report, just outlining the reasons.
Any other comments, please? Councillor Menish.
Yeah, is it possible, because it's going to be impossible even for 2 or 3 people to sit down and come up with, let's say, 3, 4 points to reject what in terms of rejection of what's been proposed. Is it possible to defer this item so that there could be proper consideration by councillors to have a proper format of in terms of objections?
The process, if people can put their objections forward, Simon will have a good look at those, and we will defer it to the next meeting for those reasons to be brought back to this committee. So it will effectively be a deferment of a different kind. Councillor Thomas, was it?
Sorry, Chair. In the past, where this situation has arisen, I've often felt that it's somewhat unfair that you're expecting immediate quotations from the MPPF for refusal, because obviously we all come here with an open mind. We're not predetermined. We haven't sat down and studied reasons for refusal in that detail. And in the past, I remember that we have had an adjournment within this meeting while 2 or 3 people approached and laid down their reasoning in front of the chair. That may be a way forward. I only offer it as a suggestion.
The reason I'm not trying to do that is because I think we need to go away, think about it, and not take more time tonight, because we've got applications that were pulled from the last meeting. I'm very keen that we try and hear, and people here waiting to do that. So I was just hoping if people could give a broad...
Is there anything more that they'd like me to go away and look at?
Just tell them what you've got there.
Yeah, so what we can do is look further into the reasons that you've given and effectively advise you how they might play out in terms of how you might define a reason for a decision notice, which is for refusal, and any implications of taking that particular route. So I've got the fact that it's outside the urban area. MPPF paragraph 180. What's the specific concern there?
Can you speak up?
Put your microphone on, please.
Yeah, sorry, I'll put my microphone on. A, I think, was the one I mentioned, and C, which was development resulting from the loss of or deterioration of irreplaceable habitats, such as ancient woodland and ancient or veteran trees, should be refused unless there are wholly exceptional reasons. And A was, if significant harm to biodiversity resulting from development cannot be avoided through locating on an alternative site with less harmful impacts, adequately mitigated or at least last resort compensated for, then planning permission should be refused. That's 180A, that last one, and 180C.
And Councillor Jones.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just briefly, I mentioned earlier paragraph 8 items A and C, which was basically, in my opinion, it failed those objectives, which was the right land in the right place and environmental objective. It's not good effective use of the land. That was also one of my reasons. And also you mentioned SP4. It fails SP4 as well. Thank you.
SP4 in what way?
Press the button. Regarding it is not in the urban area, it's in the rural area.
Thank you. Then what I suggest is that we now defer this for it to come back at the next meeting, and Simon will prepare a list of these reasons in a bit more detail. Could I have a show of hands as to whether we can do that, please? Thank you, that's agreed. Thank you very much. Well,
Sorry, point of order, Chair. I did have my hand up before the vote.
everybody
You
put their
pushed
hand
that
up.
through.
Everyone agreed.
Sorry, Chair. I'd raised my hand to say something before you went to that, and you.
Sorry, I
ignored me
think you're
completely.
behind Paul's head.
Big egg,
No,
Paul.
it's not your fault, Paul, but sorry, Dan.
It was several councillors and mentioned the highways issue. Again, I don't have the wording to hand immediately, but perhaps something in there appropriate to the highways issues would be sensible, because that is another reason which caused quite a lot of debate tonight.
That's right. So the highways issue is that we're not satisfied with the KCC assessment of the mediation. What's the word? I need a break. Mitigation. Mitigation is the word we're looking for. Okay. I'm advised that we ought to have a seconder written down. Can I have a seconder for that deferment to the next meeting? Thank you, Naomi Smith. Oh. Thank you.
Seconded.
And thank you, and everybody agreed, so that was fine. Now I will suggest that we have a 10-minute break. Oh, sorry, Councillor Mackenzie. Sorry.
There we go. There we go. I sound like a human now. I am slightly concerned because that first application has taken just nearly 2 hours, and we've got another 6 applications to go this evening. So what happens if we don't make it through all the applications tonight?
Yes. According to the Constitution, we have 4 hours to consider these applications. If we can't get through them by 11 o'clock, this committee, being the planning committee, can take a vote on extending the session to cover all the items for as long as is necessary, or any items we don't get to can be held over to the next date or an intermediate date to be decided upon after the meeting. But by far the best idea is to get through the items fairly and quickly to try and get everything done this evening. That's my personal view. There you go.
Okay, a 5-minute break then, everybody. Thanks very much. We all Could we reconvene? Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. So we are moving to item 7, application number CA 22 01845, land north of Hurston. Although another officer's name's on this report, Andrew Gamble is going to be presenting as well. So, Andrew, could I ask you to introduce the report? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this is a hybrid application at the allocated land north of Hurston site, which is one of the last allocations within the adopted plan. Being hybrid, it consists of a fill element and an outline element. So the full detailed consent is in this area in the black here, and that's comprising 261 dwellings, together with the access into the site, which is opposite the Lakesview Business Park, and the water recycling centre and wetlands needed to mitigate Stod Marsh. The outline part, which is the wider area, consists of a number of different elements as well. So in this pocket, I'll move to the next one actually. This pocket here, the white, that's a hectare area of employment land. We've got the extension to which you can vaguely make out maybe. It's quite difficult actually to see, but where my cursor's kind of hovering over to the west of the site, that's land for the extension of the primary school. You've got kind of the Skylark habitat over to the west, and there are also, it's difficult again to see, but there is a small pavilion kind of community facility here, and there's another community facility over here, which is proposed to be used by the local community as a community hall. Moving on, sorry, I've lost my train of thought. Must be that discussion we had a moment ago. So this is the phase 1 detailed element. So this is the detailed part of the overall hybrid consent. So you can see the dwellings set out amongst the site. You can also see that water recycling centre and the associated wetlands there as well. And you can also see the access into the site off the roundabout to the east. This is just some street scene images from that full detailed element, just showing some of the house types that are proposed within that phase, in which they're seeking consent for. These are just a few photos, really, just to give some of you an idea of the landscape on the site. You can see from the aerial that it's predominantly agricultural. So this is the access. So this is currently the roundabout adjacent to Lakesview. And this is where the fourth arm of the roundabout, where the cursor is, would go through into the agricultural field beyond. There's the agricultural field beyond. This is a view just taken from St Albans Road, again showing agricultural fields. And there's just one more view that I've taken just to give you some context of, again, kind of agricultural field. So that's kind of predominantly the character across it. This is the concept master plan, which I discussed in a little detail earlier. And what I'm going to do from here is just essentially conclude. So from in the officer's report, it sets out the material considerations relevant to the application. It sets out the material considerations in the context of the allocated site. So what's required through the allocation, and then what they're bringing forward through the application itself. And for the reasons set out in the officer's report, the application is recommended for grant subject to section 106 and conditions. Just as a final point, paragraph 151 of the officer's report refers to a call-in by the Secretary of State, but that should be ignored as part of the assessment. It's not relevant to this application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Andrew Gamble. Before we move on to take our speaker, and in the light of comments being made about length of meetings and so on, I myself had quite a series of questions about the detail of this. I think the report's quite long and complex. We don't know the site, and to avoid a couple of things, really. One of which is asking a lot of questions which maybe could be answered quite quickly in another way. And also, even if we start this discussion, we may decide that we wanted to defer it for further consideration. So I want to propose a site visit because I think that it would be an opportunity for certainly my questions to get answered. I've got a vague idea of the site. It's quite a large application. I know we haven't got a lot of objections to this particular development, but what we are doing is something that's in outline. We've been through some of these strategic sites before. I think this is actually the last strategic site of the 2017 plan. So we've had some experience of these, and it's a good idea for people to actually understand what it is they're approving in outline, and we have a recommendation to approve. So for all these reasons, and hopefully to give everybody the chance to get all their detailed questions without me trying to curtail a meeting into this evening, I felt that it would be good, for a number of people to have looked at the site together, and an opportunity to discuss that with planning officers there and the developer. Obviously, members of the local community can come along as well, and we can have a factual conversation to rule out a long committee meeting discussion, but also hopefully to answer everybody's points. Do I have a seconder for a site visit? Dan Smith, thank you very much. Could I just put that to the vote? Do you want to ask any questions, anybody? I'd like to just put that to, David Thomas.
Yeah, it's only that if I vote for it or against it, it's not necessarily a problem, but I'm always concerned because of my work commitments that I may not be able to make a site visit. So if I vote for, am I then someone going to be criticised the fact that you vote for a site visit and you don't even turn up? I just want to make that clarification. Thank you.
No, I think we all know that the site visit will have to be chosen to suit all the parties, and that we will have members of the committee who won't get there, but I think we'll all benefit from those people who can make it. And we do try and arrange it quite quickly after this meeting, because we've all just read these papers, we're all fresh to it. So no, that wouldn't be a problem. And Naomi Smith.
Can I then propose that we do it very early evening, which allows more working people to attend, maybe a late 5:30 meeting?
I think we'll agree the date and time outside the meeting, but we have to do it through the planning department. But of course, we'll try to accommodate as many people as possible. Absolutely.
Thank you. So could I put that? Oh, sorry, Councillor Mackenzie.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Firstly, sorry to the Chair of Hurstone Parish Council who's sat here this long. But I wanted to ask, if we do the site visit, can a formal invitation be offered to Hurstone Parish Council to join us on the site visit?
Yes, that's fine. Can we move to the vote? Everybody?
Okay, so that's carried unanimously.
Thank you very much, everybody. So we can move on to the next application, which is number 8, which is application number CA 23-01429, Bourman Way, Thanet Way, Whitstable. Could I ask Kelly Tonkin to introduce the report? Thank you.
Good evening, Member. Good evening, Chair. This application proposes an assisted living apartment block and an overflow car park serving Estuary View in Whitstable. The application site is outlined in red. The site is located within Estuary View Business Park. The application has been brought to Planning Committee as a departure from the local plan due to its location outside of the urban area and the proposed residential use within a business park. Here is the proposed site plan. The residential apartments are located in the eastern corner, just here. The care facility will provide needs for the older people who will receive supported living. The application previously received planning permission for a care facility in this location of a similar scale. The proposal would reduce the car parking for the medical centre to the north of the site here. However, this spaces will be relocated to the western part of the site, just here. This is a CGI image from within Estuary View Business Park from Bournemans Way. As you can see, the scale is of a 5-storey scale, and this has a green living wall and a green roof, and it also has the sustainability benefits of PV panels and EV charging point and air source heat pumps, which are secured by planning permission. This is a street elevation which you would see from the Thanet Way. This is the building is relocated to the rear of the medical building, and as such, it's considered that this is a suitable scale and site in this location. As set out in the officer's report, the application is recommended for grant subject to safeguarding conditions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kelly. There are 3 speakers on this application. Could I ask Dr. John Ribchester to speak first?
Good evening, Chair, Councillors and members of the public. I'm Dr. Ribchester, and I'm speaking on behalf of Whitstable Medical Practice, an NHS General Practice partnership which owns and operates Estuary View Medical Centre and also owns the ground floor of Estuary House. Both of these buildings are adjacent to the development in question. Estuary View Medical Centre is open every day of the year and is home to a busy NHS General Practice, an urgent treatment centre seeing over 200 people every day, diagnostic services, outpatient services and day surgery. The Whitstable Medical Practice is awarded outstanding status by our regulators, the Care Quality Commission, and is considered a national exemplar of large-scale general practice co-located with many services which would otherwise necessitate a hospital visit. These services are open to all and used by people from all over East Kent. The number of patients accessing all of these services is steadily rising, partly due to new housing and partly due to people from Whitstable and other parts of East Kent choosing to come here rather than to a hospital. Clearly, this reduces the pressure faced by our very busy East Kent hospitals. We provide a very busy and general practice and a range of healthcare services. Sorry, I've said that already. Access to our building is vital, 12 hours a day, 365 days a year. There is a bus service, but most people accessing healthcare do so by car. Adequate car parking is vital for patients and also for our staff. This plan includes 2 car parks exclusively for Whitstable Medical Practice patients and staff. One adjacent to Estuary Medical Centre to include a one-way system for ambulances, deliveries and cars, and a further one at the west end of the Estuary View estate. If these are not built, our services will not be accessible to the current number of patients, let alone the increasing numbers from current and future housing developments. It's vital that these car parks are part of the plan and are built and operational before work on the new building commences. This is common sense, but also confirmed by our experience of living through the construction of the adjacent Estuary House care home. This caused great difficulty for and many complaints from our patients and staff because of construction traffic and also some contractors occupying patient parking bays. We're very grateful for your consideration of the vital nature of the Whitstable Medical Practice car parks and the necessity for these to be operational before work commences on the new building. Lastly, I'd like to register our gratitude to Mr. Ernie Graham for allowing patients and staff to park on his land prior to this building being constructed. We hope he will agree to this arrangement continuing as a condition until the new car parks are operational. Thank you.
And thank you very much. Please, can we move to the next speaker, Richard Barrett, Whitstable Society.
Good evening, Chair and Councillors. I'm Richard Barrett from the Whitstable Society, but I'm giving this presentation prepared by Richard Amos, our Secretary, who can't be here this evening. The Whitstable Society still considers the proposed building to be too large for the site, damaging for the surrounding area, and with a minimal need to be co-located with the medical practice. But really tonight I want to focus our grave concern about provision of adequate parking for our two vital medical facilities at Bournemouth Way in the near and the longer term. There's a potential for anyone within CC area or East Kent in general to require access to this site. This is not just not just a Whitstable issue. The Whitstable Medical Practice estimates that at any given time there are about 220 staff and patients attending either the Whitstable Medical Practice or the East Kent Hospital outpatient facility, the vast majority by car, and these numbers are rising rapidly. To date, the considerable informal parking allowed on the applicant's site has provided sufficient space to keep pace with the rapidly growing needs of the two facilities just described by Dr. Ribchester. The 173 parking spaces now proposed will prove adequate for immediate needs, but we want to stress that this is not an evidence-based assessment. It does not take into account the current relentless local major building developments, let alone the thousands more proposed in the draft local plan. We can't see how those parking spaces will be anywhere near enough in the longer term. Without adequate on-site parking, the most obvious place to park will be in Mariners View Estate, which is opposite the Whitstable Medical Practice entrance and will require patients to cross the very busy A2990. In our February response, we requested that CCC undertake an independent parking capacity assessment for the near and longer term for all Bournemouth Way site stakeholders to be completed before formal consideration of this application, and that's clearly not happened. Per NPPF policies 93 and 130, we consider that our planning authorities should be ensuring the provision of such vital infrastructure before approving any application for further development. We ask the committee to defer a decision until an independent parking assessment has been completed, but if the committee votes to approve this application, we ask that draft conditions 3 and 29 be applied and enforced rigorously to ensure that at least 173 parking spaces will be assured for the Whitstable Medical Practice before commencement during and after construction of the proposed new building works. Can I just mention, I'm not sure that you're aware, that the Whitstable Medical Practice will have to raise £1 million to fund the new car parking facility. And we reckon that such costs should be covered by a community infrastructure levy rather than by our hard-pressed local medical providers. Thank you.
Thank you. Andrea, do we have... okay, so we move to our third speaker, Melissa McGee, who is an agent on behalf of the developer. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Evening, members. I'm Melissa McGee. I'm the architect for this project and speaking on behalf of the applicant, Graham Care. This application has been brought forward by the applicant having operated his care facilities during the pandemic. This site has been being discussed and being developed over the past 7 years, of which I've had the pleasure of being involved in. The original scheme looked to bring forward 203 suites, of which 101 are now constructed under phase 1. The 102 suite consent was granted prior to the pandemic and exceeded the CQC requirements at that stage. Post-pandemic, we've learnt so many lessons on how we can alleviate the risk of residents being isolated to their rooms with no external amenity space and their well-being being suppressed. This application looks to reduce the quantum of accommodation proposed to 71 two-bed apartments, which allow for a resident to truly age in place. An integral part of this concept is the immediate availability of care as required, supported by technology to monitor well-being. The care provision is therefore as subtle as possible and is kept in the background to maintain the residential feel of the development. Enhanced communal facilities have been included, such as a hydrotherapy pool for rehabilitation and enablement, along with a gym to allow for further resident well-being. Alongside this, through liaison with the local case officer, we've also put in place a bridge link to the neighbouring retail units at first floor level to ensure our residents can access by foot the retail units to the back of the provision. As part of this application, we've liaised closely with SG View Medical Practice to ensure that the proposed parking provision, which is currently not regularised, exceeds the current operating requirements and also regularizes the traffic flow. We've also engaged with Stagecoach, who are currently trialling an additional bus service at the request of this application and comments made on this application, and they will continue to monitor this usage for the foreseeable. We've taken the opportunity during the application to also meet with the Secure by Design officer to review opportunities for crime prevention, along with liaising with the case officer through the process. We believe the proposal will provide an opportunity for much needed care to become a choice move for the surrounding area, whilst also securing an adequate regularised parking provision for the existing medical centre on site. The offering provides an opportunity for residents to be supported in a home-from-home environment with the highest standards of care delivered by a dedicated team of experts, while leading an active and independent lifestyle. We thank you for your consideration this evening and would welcome your support in recommending this application for approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much to our speakers. I would like to propose to support the officer's recommendation, which is grant, subject to safeguarding conditions, without prejudice to the nature of the discussion to go ahead, but in the interests of having a proposal for us to debate. Do I have a seconder? Dan Smith. Thank you very much, Councillor Dan Smith, seconding. Could I open the debate, please? Councillor Mackenzie. I'll start writing names. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Apologies if I've missed it, but is there a emergency vehicle parking bay included in the proposal in close proximity to the building in case any of the residents need an ambulance per se and it needs to get close?
Kelly, are you able to answer that?
Yep, there's a ambulance drop-off right by the entrance.
Thank you. This proposal is in my ward, and I have been keeping a close eye on it and have spoken with planning officers about this project. And we got the bridge across to the retail centre, which we felt was a positive move, so everybody can go and have a cup of tea and a natter in Marks and Spencer's cafe. The footprint, I just want to clarify, the footprint of this proposal is similar to the care home that passed planning previously. That's one of my questions. Is that correct? The car parking is now become more than what is already there. The bus is now back. Is that because the bus has been funded by this project or the other care home? And I do know that the bus does stop at 5 p.m, but care workers could well be working later than that and still can't cross the road at Borstal Hill at the bus stop and at Clapham Hill. So I'll reiterate my point about crossings at Clapham Hill. Thank you.
Thank you. Kelly Tonkin, do you want to comment?
With the bus, yes, it does stop at 5:30. It is expected that the caregivers will be driving there due to the amount of equipment that they would have. Otherwise, there is the Clapham Hill where they could walk to and get the bus service from there.
Where am I? Councillor Old, please.
Thank you, Chair. The elderly population is the fastest growing demographic in our area and has been largely neglected in the local plan. And I think it's great to see some attention finally being paid to that in this proposal, which goes some way towards meeting it. Perhaps I should make a declaration of interest, as I'm soon to be I'm part of this demographic as well. One of the things that I'm very pleased to see in this application is the supported living accommodation. As a previously I was a GP, as some of you may know, and very few people when they're reaching the stage of their life when they need additional care, really want to go into residential or nursing home care. What they want to do is they want to live in supported accommodation and try and live as independently, although with support, for as long as possible. And this goes some way to meeting that need. And the most cruel thing that we do to older people at this stage of their lives is that we separate married couples so that one of them requires nursing residential care and goes into nursing and residential care and splits a couple that have been together for years and years and years. So the proposal that provides supported accommodation for the patient and additional accommodation for their carer is something that's got to be really welcomed. So I'm thoroughly excited by this proposal. I note the comments made about the parking that's going to come with this, but that seems a necessary consequence of a really ambitious proposal, and I give it my wholehearted approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dan Smith?
Thank you, Chair. As mention was made of the bus services and that they would be monitored by Stagecoach, I would like to ask that in the that we put a condition that that monitoring statistic is once it has started is made available over a period of time prior to the completion of this development, because if there is a gap, because it would be good to see how impactful this is on the bus services, and can they be is there arguments to be made from that data that would support an enlarged or a greater or a better bus service, following in line with the council's strategy to get a more bus-driven structure. And it would be very helpful if we can get buses to this site and to the surgery nearby as frequently as possible, in order to help the people that go there. I should also perhaps declare that I have been there and used it, and so has some of my family.
Thank you. Does that work? Kate.
Condition 11 refers to the travel plan and also includes the provision for monitoring, so that could be included within that monitoring.
Yes, it was mentioned that it would be monitored. It's just making those in that monitoring. I think that's done by Stagecoach, and obviously they're a private company, so it's just making that data available to the council so that it can be added to the consideration, because I think it's a material set of data that would help both this development and the adjacent surgery and our council's bus-led strategy. Thank you.
What we'll do is speak with Stagecoach and Kent County Council to see if it's possible to get that data over a long period of time, then we can make it available to you all.
Thank you. Councillor Stockley.
Thank you, Chair. Following on from Councillor Old's points, I think this is a good development. I'm aware that the density is pretty high, but I think on this occasion, it's one of the few occasions when that is appropriate. I feel that this is something we should support and something we need more of, to be frank. So personally, and of course listening to the ward councillors, who also seem to be generally in favour, I follow suit. Thank you.
Councillor Prentice.
Thank you, Chair. I do strongly support this application. I do think it's this committee and this council, as the planning authority, should do as much as it can to assist people getting to the assisted living home, and not relying wholly on car parking. So whatever we can do to support sustainable transport, regardless of the time of day, because as Councillor Naomi Smith was saying, people's shifts don't necessarily fit the 9-to-5 pattern, and we need to be supporting how people move around our district, whatever time of day it is. So I support this application, and I welcome Councillor Dan Smith's comments and others' comments on monitoring the bus service figures and how people get here. So thank you.
Thank you. If there are no further comments, let's move straight to the vote. So the proposal is to grant subject to safeguarding conditions, and Councillor Dan Smith is seconding.
And that vote is carried unanimously.
That's great. Thank you very much, everybody. And let's move on to the next application. Where am I? Application 9. So application 9 is number CA 23005 16, land adjacent to 41 St George's Street. Could I ask the planning officer, Christian de Gruyser, to introduce the report? Thank you, Christian.
Lovely. Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. Before I start this presentation, just be aware that there's a typo at paragraph 24 of the report, which states that the development complies with the relevant policies of the local plan. This should read conflict. So, moving on. This planning application is for a youth hub formed from shipping containers on Canterbury City Council-owned land adjacent to the former Wilko building in Canterbury. Here is the proposed block plan. And here are the proposed floor plans. So for context, here we have some CGI images showing the youth hub in context with its surroundings. This CGI image in particular, just to the left, there is a portion of the city wall. So as demonstrated, the site is very close to this heritage asset, as demonstrated by this site photo also. The city wall is a scheduled ancient monument and is also within the Canterbury Conservation Area. So it's considered that the building would neither preserve or enhance the conservation area and would detract from the setting of the city wall. The development is judged to cause less than substantial harm to the setting of these heritage assets. The National Planning Policy does state that where a development would cause less than substantial harm, the application should be refused unless the public benefits outweigh this harm. So in this case, the proposal would provide facilities for young people in the city and therefore would provide some community benefit. However, the strategic approach being pursued by Kent County Council Youth Service Team is to focus on young people who are at risk of exploitation. The KCC Youth Team has now started working with non-traditional partners such as McDonald's, as well as regular detached youth work to assess the environment that they're in and to reduce the risk to those vulnerable young people through support. The proposed Youth Hub project is aimed more at a wider group of young people who may benefit from a stopping place before journeys home. Overall, therefore, although the facility would provide some benefit to young people, it is concluded that the need for this facility would not outweigh the harm to these heritage assets. Therefore, in accordance with the heritage policies of the MPPF, it is recommended that the application is refused. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have speakers on this item. Please can I ask Dane Joseph to speak?
Good evening. I'm here to discuss the application of a youth hub adjacent to 41 St. George's Street. I understand at the moment the recommended course of action about whether the building is approved is currently a refusal. I also understand that one of the reasons why it's been recommended as a refusal is due to the fact that the structure may interfere with the city wall's historical image. While I'm aware that the city's image is important as tourism is important aspect of Canterbury, in my opinion, I think the future of the youth of the city is much more important. Young people are often referred to as the future, and this is just more than a cliche. This is a fundamental truth. Our community's long-term vitality and success depend on the well-being and development of its younger members. Unfortunately, I feel that not enough is being done to support our youth and to keep them from engaging in antisocial behavior. I say this because I can personally relate to it. When I was younger, when me and my friends had nothing to do during the summer or on the weekends, we were going places we shouldn't have been going and doing things we shouldn't have been doing, as it was just something to do. If we had that opportunity to go somewhere during the summer that didn't require money and was just a place for us and other young people, we would have benefited from it greatly, as it would have given us something to do. Even still today, I can only really think of 2 activities the city has to offer for the youth, and even then, only one of these activities is free. I feel that it's because of this lack of activity that we are seeing more and more antisocial behavior from the youth. A lot of the time, the youth who are engaging in these activities are not bad people, but just kids who get mixed up in the wrong crowd, as for them, they see it as something to do. While I understand that by introducing a youth hub, it will not automatically get rid of all antisocial behavior, it will definitely be a step in the right direction to resolving it. It will provide a safe, engaging space where young people can spend their time constructively, reducing the likelihood of them turning to negative influences. By approving the youth hub, we will be sending a message to the youth of our city. The message being that they matter, that their futures are important, and that we are willing to invest in their well-being. Conversely, if this opportunity is squandered, we risk conveying the image of the city is more important than the lives of the lives and the futures of its young residents. It's a matter of priorities, and I believe that prioritizing our youth will yield long-term benefits for the entire community. In conclusion, I strongly urge the Planning Committee to rethink the original recommendation of refusal and to approve the youth hub.
Thank you very much. And now could I ask Mel Dawkins to speak? Thank you. We need to just note that Mel Dawkins is a City Councillor and also a Kent County Councillor, just so that you're aware. Thank you. Thanks, Mel.
Evening all. I just want to make some points to fill in the gaps, and I'm so grateful for Dane speaking there. It was amazing. Firstly, the fact is young people haven't got anywhere to go in town. The issue is not going away, and we can't pretend it's not there. And here tonight is the start of a small solution to resolving this, as well as sending a very important message to our young people that we've got their back and we're looking out for them. There is a need, this is apparent. Mind have reported young people in the UK have higher mental health need than ever. 1 in 6 young people in England, aged 5 to 16, experienced a mental health problem in 2020. That's up from 1 in 9 in 2017. Mind's not making the grade in 2021 shows that secondary schools are struggling to meet the needs of young people with mental health problems. Their research surveyed approximately 1,300 young people across England and found that 78% of young people said that the school had made their mental health worse. 48% said young people told us they had been punished at school for behaviour that was caused by their mental health problems. The Youth Hub could be there to aid and pick up some of those statistics. Regarding the location, all options have been explored. I can guarantee you that. A group of interested partners, which also included Canterbury Bid, KCC officer, Whitefriars, McDonald's, the police, looked under every stone and every corner to find a suitable place. If there was a better location, it would have been found. Hence why it's this location. Also, the Canterbury City Council officers have looked for alternative locations since receiving that application that has been sitting on a shelf for a year now and come to the same conclusions. A survey delivered a couple of years ago interviewed about 500 young people, and the evidence that came back was young people want a safe space they can hang out with friends after school, free Wi-Fi, cheap drink, and a snack within the triangle. And you all know what the triangle is. Dane John, McDonald's, the bus station. Kent County Council have in fact cut all their youth funding and still yet to provide any indication of what's replacing it for young people. The Riverside has been shut down and is opened again as a family hub, and that model only provides provision for the early years. Regarding city impact, since the original application was made, the city impact has disbanded and all the directors stepped down. A new charity has been set up with different partners, which also includes Joey Wicks from MBE Prince of Wales and Blake McCaskill from the City Sound Project. So there's an immense amount of experience there to run this project forward. It'll be managed by a centre coordinator, full-time youth worker and a part-time youth worker. I really want to get this in. Rose-tinted glasses. If the question is that the harm to heritage and the impact of the character of the city outweighs the need to support our young people, to give them the provision for a much needed space, I have evidence, then take off those rose-tinted glasses and please look at the reality. The harm to young people by not offering them a vision that gives sanctuary, a sense of belonging and identity is far more detrimental. And those issues you see in the city will continue. To summarise, things to remember making a decision. 1, it's a pilot, a temporary structure. There's no cost to the council. The project is funded and run by experienced and willing voluntary sector. There's nothing for young people in town. Mental health anxiety is increasing and schools are struggling to cope. 3, youth provision is being closed down. That includes the Riverside. 4, what's there really any better? You've got tents, you've got ASB, you've got youth groups of young people congregating. 5, the building will look attractive. 6, it's also referenced in the corporate plan sustainable development goals. Just read the corporate plan that we all adopted last week. Thank you. Oh yeah. Do you want to be part of the solution or the problem? Thank you. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. And Ed Withers, would you like to come forward to speak?
Thank you. Good evening, members. Good evening, Chair. My name's Ed Withers. Last time I spoke on an application similar to this was many years ago. Studio 41 wanted to relocate to Wincheap and it was rejected then. I'm really hoping that we can achieve a different result for the youth of Canterbury today. Through my work with Pride Canterbury, the City Sound Project, student nights in the city, more recently the Canterbury City Show, I know that young people feel very much neglected in this city. They have done for a long time. And so I'm here today to speak in support of a project that could transform the lives of our city's young people and breathe new life into our city. This city lacks a safe, engaging space for youth to call their own. It's not new to anyone, in this room, I think, that young people want a place with free Wi-Fi, affordable food and drink, participate in activities. The location's not news to many of us here, near McDonald's, near the bus station and the Dame John Gardens. I don't think that this location is a particularly controversial location in terms of what young people want. They're looking for a modern, safe environment to hang out in. Somebody mentioned earlier about reaching out to exploited young people. I think it's important to note that exploited young people are part of the young people collective. And if you want to reach out to exploited young people, you have to reach out to all young people. This youth hub isn't just about providing a hangout spot. It's about providing a way to reach young people in the community by bringing them to one place so that organisations, charities, youth workers, social workers can reach those young people, which is obviously very important. It's a really cool design. It's inspired by Box Park and places like that in Shoreditch and Wembley. It's a really cool design. I mean, when the pictures came up on the screen there, I think also you can barely notice it. Like, I think in terms of fitting in with a backdrop, it does probably the best job I've ever seen of something like that. The city wall is there, but it's not a tall city wall. It's a very short, stumpy thing on the right. I mean, it's not like it's, this glorious Roman monument there. There's also, exploration of a phase 2. So there's definite sort of like future thinking going on here, which I think is really important. In conclusion, I'd say that this youth hub represents a crucial investment into the city's future, both socially and economically. It addresses a clear need it is innovative, and it provides a space where young people can thrive. I urge everyone here to support this visionary project, and please let's give our young people the space that they deserve, and also the belief in this community of decision makers that they will make decisions that are right for the young people of the city. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. I'd like to propose a halfway house on this application, and also to maybe sort of think about what is possible, and to start the discussion from that point of view. I think that the objections about the site, I did look at it today, walk into it, and it certainly isn't one that immediately strikes you as being possible to ruin, if you can put it like that. It's a odd building, Wilko, and the wall is, as one of the gentlemen said, low at this point. However, the more important point is that potentially we could make a temporary arrangement here. These containers could be moved. As one of the speakers has said, there hasn't been a possibility of finding an alternative location. If we were to go for an arrangement for, let's say, 3 years or 4 years, depending on what people feel, that would be a halfway house. And if this part of the city became not the right place for it, or increasingly much more done up, then that could be a reason for moving them, or equally an alternative place could be found. I completely understand. Sorry to make a speech, but I think I just want to get this over rather than dragging. So I want to put my points over quickly. If KCCs are the main objectors, the idea that there's not a proven need is to do with outreach work. Now, I absolutely get their point, but this is not necessarily targeting the most vulnerable, but what it is targeting is the people who might become the most vulnerable. And there's really a point been made about that from our speakers. And what one would be able to do over maybe a 3 or 4 year period would be to test this, to find out what the need was, to have a look at this, to run it as a pilot, and to do an assessment of it. I think that we should make that a condition of doing this, that it is monitored, and it is the use and the purpose for which it's coming would be researched. So therefore, my proposal is to grant this planning application for, I'll say 4 years, and then if people want to reduce it, they can, for 4 years, on the basis that this could be a temporary provision to understand and explore the need for such a provision or similar provision, and that we understand is near heritage assets, but we also recognise it's in a very narrow corridor next to a post-war building, which is very boxy itself. So do I have a seconder? Keith Bothwell. Thank you. Could I then open this proposal up for discussion? Quite a few hands. Councillor Mackenzie, and I'll write down everybody else's. Thank you. Oh, it was probably, no, I'm not going to say that again. Apparently, Councillor Smith was first. I mean, it doesn't matter, you'll all be heard. Go ahead, Dan.
Okay, I'll go as Councillor Naomi Smith. Yes. I would propose 3 years, I think, would be my preference on this. But also, who will monitor how this project is running? Because I don't believe we've got officers that could... I don't think it's a planning... It would necessarily be under planning of how successful it would be. I mean, the only thing we would... who would be the monitoring of this? Which department in the council would it come under?
I think that I envisaged the project would monitor it, and that what we'd expect is a report at the end of that. I think we could also ask for that to be checked, couldn't we? Yeah, I think we could ask for that to be checked, that we would, you know, the expectation would be there, and we'd write it into, let's get some form of words, but yeah. Yes.
Could the community safety partnership be involved with that in some sort of monitoring? Because it would make it, you know, because if it becomes a problematic, what's the word? Yeah, you know, a cafe, youth centre, it becomes, you know, we would need to sort of act quickly.
I think what we're saying is it's not a very long project. You know,
Yeah.
I envisage, you see, you take a while to set up a project like this, don't you? It won't arrive overnight. So you won't start monitoring it from day one. I mean, maybe, you know, 9 months in, then you do it for a year and then you make the assessment. So 3 years, I think, is a minimum, because I think you'd need a year to monitor and then a year to write up and present a report. Also, to look for an alternative space if that didn't seem to be the best place. I think, Councillor Mackenzie, you can come in now.
There we go. I am pleased to be commenting on this application since, as I'll never tire of telling people, I am the youngest councillor on this council. I think that there is significant community value to a youth hub in the city centre. I mean, as I said when I declared interests earlier, I work on St George's Street, and I see, and I'm not exaggerating when I see hundreds of young people almost every day engaging in deviant or antisocial behaviour, or behaviour that can cause a nuisance, and it is entirely preventable. And, you know, as Dane, one of the speakers, said, you know, there is very few existing youth facilities available in Canterbury as it is. If we were to approve this one, it would become the first one that I'm aware of in the city. So, you know, the potential to give young people the ability to form friendships and healthy skills, to reduce antisocial behaviour, to bring more vibrance to our high street, I think is a real community value. And, you know, when I was a teenager, I went to a youth club. And because I went to a youth club, I was playing football and board games rather than spray painting graffiti or doing other naughty things. So I would argue, given the circumstances, that there is real community value to this.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bothwell, then Councillor Thomas, then Councillor Stockley.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I very much support this project, and I have some comments on the design. I know that the officers have commented on the unsympathetic design. I think the architects, the designers, would do well to look at the precedents they've included in the design and assets statement, each of which uses far fewer different materials, so they're sort of single material solutions. So I think it would be better, design-wise, to limit the palette of materials, and I think that would improve the appearance. Thank you.
I didn't quite catch that. Were you proposing alternative? I didn't quite catch it.
No, I think there are several different materials shown in the proposal, about 3 or 4 different materials, and if the design was limited to fewer, one or two at most different materials and colours, then it would look better. As
Okay.
the precedent.
Thank you.
In the
Perhaps
design
people could
action
take that
statement
away as a thought. Sorry, looks Miss Councillor Dan Smith, and then we'll go on to the others.
Thank you very much, Chair. Two points, really. The first was the business. I mean, we need to probably check if there was a limited duration thing that was voted on, if that business model would work, because obviously there will be sponsors or supporters financially for this venture. Perhaps from the bid, I'm not sure exactly how it's financed. Perhaps that can be worked out outside. But obviously, if you limit that duration to 3 years, that changes their business model. So that perhaps needs to be something that's checked. On the second point is, I think the first speaker was very interesting. He was saying about the obviously young people being part of Canterbury, and that is it, as well as all the heritage factors, and that's absolutely true. I mean, if you take young people are a slice in, if you like, in generation that have existed since well, a very long time in Canterbury, going back 2,000 years or more. So there would have been young people in every generation. So I totally and utterly agree that we do need facility for them. And I also agree that a limited duration for this is, pilot is sensible. What I would also like to see, though, is actually built into this that there are strenuous efforts made for an alternative, because I think there are very nearby alternatives. And Councillor Dawkins, in her speech, did say that every stone had been turned, but I can visibly see easy ways to do things. I mean, you could actually make the access to the square by Iron Bar Lane accessible from the Iron Bar Lane bit that goes into the Burgate, and then use the entrance where Link Lane is to put this. It would be right on the highway there, but it's a highway that's used only to access to park for disabled people at the moment, and you could move that access and use that link, and it would be very close. So any bit of design planning is perhaps it would need a town planner to look at this, and I think that's something that obviously Simon will be aware of, and the planning officers, that this is something that could be built into the fabric of the city centre, and should be, because I think there is a need for this kind of facility. Thank you.
Thank you. I think in terms of business model, what we're saying is 3 years, but obviously they could come back in 3 years if they've found that the project's working and they've got a good, so I don't think they needed to plan for only 3 years, but just to recognise that lots of businesses operate for a short while and then have to come back to planning. So can I just move on? David Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, mine's a logistic question, really. I mean, we've got shipping containers, they've got to come in on backs of lorries and crane in and off. I'm just making sure that the pathways and the access to it there's enough access to it, and obviously there's the weight limits on the pavement is adequate for what you're trying to do. I don't know the logistics, but that's the question on there, because you don't want all the pavement coming up once a lorry goes across. And obviously, if you do decide to move it, there's obviously a cost incurred to actually moving that container to another space. So that could incur extra costs if they do decide to move it, and who pays for those costs? Thank you.
I think there's quite a way to go before you would get to that point, but I think we are the landowner. So, we have to look at this depending on what this committee decides today. Councillor Stockley?
Sorry, Chair, can I just come back on that? It's not, it's whether the actual road or pathway can take that construction, because if it can't, I can't vote for the application. I'm open-minded, but I'm just asking that question. It's something to consider.
Yeah, I think it's not strictly a planning consideration, but what will happen is that if they're accessing the land, if it was a highway, then the Highways Authority would need to be certain that it wasn't going to impact on the highway. But this land's not a highway, it's council, Canterbury City Council land. So in order to grant a lease, we'll need to make sure that whatever they're doing there won't damage our land. So there'll be sort of due diligence through that process. It's a sort of fairly unique one in that we get the opportunity as a landowner to, decide whether this actually goes there or not. So planning committee might say yes, but the council as landowner could, in theory, say no, or at least put conditions on the detail.
Councillor Ian Stockley, please.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I think it's important that if we're going to support this, we need to know a few more things. Firstly, as Councillor Thomas pointed out, that if we agree a 3-year limit on this, I don't think there will be a problem. If it's successful, then obviously future planning committees will look at it on its merits and very likely extend that. I am concerned about the heritage angle. I notice you've got a chapel, which I believe is a Masonic chapel, within a stone's throw of where this is going to be sited. I'm also concerned that if in a period of a year or two that this does fail or becomes an antisocial problem or whatever, then I don't want the council to have to foot the bill to remove these structures. So I do think we need to get something in place legally to ensure that whoever's putting them there is responsible for removing them at our behest in the future. But I do think we do need to support young people. I'm very surprised that Councillor Dawkins' assertion that every stone has been turned, because, you know, to be honest, if this was anything other than a youth centre, there is no way on God's green earth that 2 shipping containers will be put in this location. And it is pretty much unprecedented. So I'm conflicted. I think we do need this facility, but I think where it is, you know, there's probably not that many people living in the vicinity, but they will be travelling, and I understand the vicinity to McDonald's and the bus station, etc. So there are pluses and minuses. Thank you.
Councillor Prentice.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is a really interesting application. I think that as a pilot scheme, if this committee were to decide that a 3-year period would be appropriate to begin with, I think that would be appropriate, actually, bearing in mind the sensitive location, and it is a sensitive location from a heritage point of view. And I understand why the officers have recommended what they have, even if I don't entirely agree with it, because ultimately we have to make a judgment on whether we think this is a good application and the right application at the right time and in the right place. There probably isn't any other alternative to a shipping container type setup. If we were to build it, if it were to be planned to be built with sort of local Kentish materials, or the sort of materials that is it flint or the city wall is made out of, I'm sure that would be done, but that's not going to be possible for something that we're going to, you know, hope to try out for 3 years, or whatever this committee decides. Let's also bear in mind what's next to it. The building right next to it is not of architectural merit. That's a product of the Baedeker raids in 1942, when that whole end of Canterbury was totally reshaped. So we're not, I think anything that is added in that very nondescript space is going to probably be an improvement, even if it's a temporary thing. I do strongly support that if the principle of this, if this centre is a success, and I also want this, I'd love to see this centre as being as inclusive and welcoming to every strata of young people in Canterbury, and I hope we can keep a sort of a friendly eye on it through our other committees. But I think that sort of leads me to say, doing nothing isn't an option. We do have issues in that area. There isn't a more appropriate space, bearing in mind where young people congregate, and because they are simply waiting for their buses and changing buses in the city centre. So something positive in that area is a good thing. So from a planning application point of view, I don't think it's perfect, but I will support it because I think we need it. And let's say in 3 years' time, we can take another judgment. And I think, anyone who maybe isn't in favour of it, I hope we can at least assuage some of their concerns. Thank you.
I'm minded to go to the vote. I can see, Dan, you've got your hand up again, but we are approaching 10 o'clock. And is it really a quick one? Look, listen, half a minute.
Go on in, I'll be really quick.
Half a minute, really.
If there are any sort of issues or legal problems, obviously the police involvements and things like that, we would need break clauses in the lease. So I'm just saying that if we do go for a lease, which I do support, that this is something that the council would need to arrange as landowner, but I would strongly recommend that we do that. Thank you.
Just a second, everybody. I think that it's important, and it has been mentioned by a number of people, that we recognise the content of the report a little bit more than maybe I did at the beginning, but people have during this meeting. I think it's really important to say that what the report says is valid. I wasn't unhappy with the report on the basis of that evidence. However, I think that what it is clear from the speakers and probably a lot of our own knowledge of the city centre is that while KCC have a point about the groups they're focusing on, those are not all the young people in our community. And there is a wider group that we would like to, first of all, be offering something to, but also be recognising that they haven't got a facility, and that, in fact, there are reasons, perhaps, for saying that those young people will be less likely to get into those other groups and may even pull some of those vulnerable people in. And because we don't have an absolutely identified need in number terms, what we are saying is that this will be for 3 years in order for the project to demonstrate those things. Many of the other things that people have commented on, I just want to say, will be the subject of a contract, obviously, for this, and there will be quite a number of practical things that will have to be ironed out before this would actually, in practice, go ahead if we give planning permission.
Jumping the gun somewhat, Chair. Just wanted to know, basically, obviously, I've forgotten what I was going to say. That's not good, is it?
I think we move to the vote. Yes, we're voting for 3 years. So, Ian, you've remembered.
I remembered, sorry, Chair. It was basically your point about KCC not agreeing the need for this. Presumably, this isn't affected KCC's funding model. This is separate and above what KCC would be supplying. So it really is largely irrelevant what KCC think on this occasion.
The reason I'm commenting on it is because Christian had that information in his report, and that information is valid from that perspective. But we all know KCC have radically reduced any focus on the wider community of young people, and they only comment on very vulnerable young people. And, you know, we do know that that funding has been reduced, as facilities have been reduced, which makes this even more important. But we are saying 3 years, and they need to come back for further permission in order for the project to demonstrate. Sorry. Simon would like to make a comment.
Yes, I think the 3-year permission, obviously the committee recognised the impact on the heritage assets, but then balanced that against what a committee considered to be the need and a relatively urgent need to get the thing happening quickly. So I think what you do is you grant the permission for 3 years, and you reassess the need at the time, in 3 years' time, against the heritage impacts. And you'd also ask the applicant to look at whether alternative locations are possible in 3 years' time as well.
Could we move to the vote? I am mindful there are many other applications waiting. Andrea, please. Thank you.
So that is carried unanimously.
Thank you very much, everybody. So we need to, sorry, Christian, did you want to? Fine. We need to move on to the next application. Did you want, sorry, Andrew, did you want me to? No, it's fine. Okay, fine. We're going on to item 10, which is application number CA 23 012276, Hoath Farm, Beaksbourne Lane, Canterbury. Christian de Grusa, could I please ask you again to present the report on this one? Thank you very much.
Just wait for it to... Thank you, Chair. So this application is for two-storey detached dwellings following the demolition of an existing office building. The site is located within Hoath Farm in Beaksbourne, which comprises a former farmstead where a number of the buildings have been converted into residential use. The building subject to this application is located here to the northeast. However, given that it falls outside of the district's urban boundaries or any other identified settlement, it would represent a departure from our adopted local plan, which is the reason it's being presented at committee this evening. However, the planning history for this site is a material consideration. Notwithstanding Stodmarsh, an identical scheme was considered acceptable to appeal by the planning inspector. The siting of these units, which is the same as that proposed, can be seen on the block plan here. So here we have the proposed elevations for plot 1. And here we have the proposed elevations for plot 2. So with the addition of conditions relating to a drainage strategy and construction environmental management plan, the officer recommendation would be to approve the scheme subject to the safeguarding conditions listed in the report, along with the approved legal agreement which has secured Stodmarsh mitigation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we have one speaker on this, who is Graham Oates, the applicant agent. Thank you. If you could come forward, thank you.
Evening, Chair and councillors. I'm here today to express my strong support for Canterbury Council's Planning Department's thoughtful and well-considered report on the development at Hoath Farm. The project, which involves replacing an old concrete barn with PD for residential, with two carefully detailed barns, represents a perfect blend of preservation, modernisation and community enhancement. First, let's consider the current state of Hoath Farm. The existing concrete barn, was functional in its time, no longer serves the needs of our community. It stands as a relic of the past, occupying valuable brownfield land that could be transformed into something far more beneficial. The proposal to replace this barn with two beautifully designed barns is a sensible, forward-thinking solution. These two barns are not just ordinary buildings. They're meticulously planned to harmonise with the surrounding environment. The design respects the rural character of Hoath Farm, ensuring that the new structures blend seamlessly with the existing landscape, and careful attention to detail preserves the charm of the countryside whilst providing modern, comfortable living spaces for future residents. By opting to build just two houses, the Planning Department has demonstrated the commitment to responsible development. This approach minimises disruption to the local community and maintains the open rural feel that we all cherish. It is a thoughtful balance between progress and preservation, showing that we can enhance our living conditions without compromising our heritage. Environmental considerations are also forefront of the project. The new houses will be constructed using sustainable materials and energy-efficient technologies. They not only reduces the environmental footprint of the development, but also sets a precedent for future projects within our area. It's a clear message that Canterbury values green, responsible growth. In terms of the community benefits, the redevelopment offers more than just improving housing. The new homes will likely attract families who will contribute to the local economy and the community life. This incremental growth supports the local business services without overwhelming the infrastructure. Additionally, the design includes landscaping and green spaces that will enhance the visual appearance and ecological values of the area. I commend the Canterbury Council Planning Department for their work on this proposal, their backing of the community and their respect of the rural heritage and their commitment to sustainable development are all evident within the plan and their report. In conclusion, the redevelopment of Hoath Farm is a thoughtful and well-balanced project. It replaces outdated structures with 2 carefully designed barns to respect our rural landscape and incorporate sustainable practices and enhance the community. I'd urge everybody to support the proposal as it represents a positive step forward for Canterbury. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you. So I propose that we accept the officer's recommendation, which is section 101 grant, subject to legal agreement and safeguarding conditions. Do I have a seconder? Dan, thank you. Dan Smith, thank you. Thank you very much. I mean, this is a straightforward application given the planning history and the overcoming the reasons that the inspector raised. I would like to propose that we just simply move to the vote unless people have got any objections. Keith. Councillor Bothwell, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of points. One is that looking through the application documents, I can't see any specific energy strategy apart from a vague aspiration for energy efficiency. And I wondered whether we could impose a condition similar to one we previously imposed on the land to the south of Bournemouth Way, where we asked for a particular standard zero carbon, which is in the current draft of the local plan. And the second point was that Hoath Farm has seen a number of piecemeal developments over several years, and I'm just wondering, is this the end of them, or will the farmstead continue to expand indefinitely?
I think we're in a bit of difficulty with this because we've got basically a building that's already there. It's not starting from scratch, Councillor Bothwell. And I also think that we can't impose conditions that are in the future plan. We're only, I mean, I was never happy, I have to tell you, with what we've got in the previous plan, but that was nothing to do with me. I mean, we haven't required higher standards than government regulations. But I will just check that I'm right about that, but I don't believe we can do that. We've been around this one before. It is unfortunate. You know, I think that they are, you know, he's talked about it being sustainable, but obviously chapter and verse we haven't exactly got, but we can't require it because we are operating under, you know, if you like, normal standards which this meets, as I understand it. Yeah, sorry about that. Councillor Jones.
Sorry, Chair. The second point was about the piecemeal development of Hoath Farm. This is, I wonder whether there's any limit to how many new dwellings will be permitted on that site.
I thought I said no, we can't do that one. But anyway, we aren't really able to do that because we have no planning application in front of us. We just have to deal with the one we've got. I do appreciate, again, it is a point often made that people do piecemeal developments, but that's all we can do, is deal with each one as they come forward. We have to focus on the one in front of us, and that's right. Yeah. So that's where we are. Sorry, Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. Nothing major. Just to note that on condition 9, just to request, if at all possible, that when we're planting hedges in particular, that we use British native plants. Fantastic for biodiversity. We don't just chuck in Leylandii, because that doesn't work. But if I don't know if we could put that in. You've got it down as a condition, species and size, obviously not specifics, but if we could use British natives, won't cost you much more money, if at all, it'd be the same, but you'll get much more biodiversity out of it.
If I may add to that, Chair,
I don't see why we couldn't put a condition in there if that's what everybody wants. Let's just get some wording.
Yes, Chair, if I could add to that briefly, would that be possible to make that a mixed British natives, because they are by far in the rural location the best?
Mixed British native. Yeah. Let's get the language right. You can buy that stock because I did myself recently. So in the landscaping condition 9, we will add in the species you'll say mixed British native stock. Thank you. So with that proviso, that we will add that as a condition, could we move to the vote, please, Andrea? Thank you.
And that is carried unanimously.
Thank you, everybody. So we move on to item 11. And this is application number CA 2400458, 7A Hassel Reach, Thunnington. Right, just a second. Give me a second. Christian, you're doing the next one. 3 in a row. Christian, if you could, De Grusa, if you could please introduce the report. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Good evening again, members. So this application is for a single-storey extensions along with alterations to the existing house, number 7A. So as we can see here, the site is accessed via a shared right-of-way along Hassel Reach in Canterbury, which passes number 8A, 7 and 7B, and includes a residential curtilage of number 7A, which is the application site to be extended, and number 6 to the north, which will be reconfigured to facilitate an enlarged garden for the application site. So this can be seen on the proposed block plan here. Although large, the extension to the northeast would be single-storey in scale and sufficiently broken up by a combination of pitched and flat roof forms, along with a variety of materials. This can be seen on the proposed elevation drawings here. So here are a couple of photos showing the site in context with the nearest affected neighbouring occupier, number 7B. The application site is here in the background. Number 7B is in the foreground here. This is a photo of the two sort of side by side. And it should be stressed that care has been taken on this application to ensure that any impact to this particular neighbour is acceptable in planning terms. And it's considered that on this occasion, given that the extension would be single-storey in scale, as you can see here, it would be set down from the main ridge of the dwelling itself. And as you can see on the block plan here, it would also be separated from the neighbouring occupier of number 7B. It's considered that on this occasion, the impact to this neighbour is acceptable on planning grounds. And just for context here is a view from number 7B's front conservatory, which looks towards the current rear boundary of number 7A, the application site. And the building itself, the dwelling to be extended, is just here to the left. So the site itself is largely hidden from the public realm, although it's noted that some views could be achieved from the river footpath towards the northwest. And this is illustrated by the CGI drawing shown here. So just for context, the proposed extension is this pitched roof element here. The application site to which it's extending off from is this sort of roughly orange glazed gable here in the background. The neighbouring occupier, number 7B, is here to the left. And then number 6 is in the foreground here, which is going to have a reconfigured garden. Overall, therefore, given their single-storey scale and limited visibility, the proposed extensions are considered to have an acceptable impact on neighbouring occupiers, along with the character and appearance of the street scene. And for these reasons, the offer recommendation is to grant. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we've got several speakers, so please could I invite Janice Brown to come, and you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Janice Brown. I live at 7B Hasselreach, which is immediately next door to the proposed planning application. I've lived here for 37 years in quiet enjoyment. The planning department had recommended to grant application. However, have they looked at all the objections, as the majority of key objections, which I will list, do not appear to have been considered in their report? Namely the Wildlife Country Act 1981, the Water Environment and Water Framework Directive Regulation 2017, which covers pollution, drainage problems, for example, the proposed swimming pool. The planning officer has expressed stately that the dwelling will not be visible from outside of the site. Any reasonable person looking at the site drawing would consider that the statement factually is incorrect. It is obvious from the drawings that this proposed property will be overmassing, overlooking, overbearing and overshadowing alongside the configuration of the windows. My privacy would be directly impacted. The planning application for this development is not in keeping with the existing modest bungalows which surround it in the small, quiet cul-de-sac. In my opinion, this is not a small-scale extension. My property has a sand lounge to the front where I currently enjoy uninterrupted views and spend the vast majority of my time in. I'm 80 years old and have enjoyed the current environment vista for the last 37 years. This application is having a huge impact on my mental and physical health, which is in contravention of Article 8 of the Human Rights Act. I also believe this application is in contravention of the National Planning Framework and the National Design Guide and should be considered under the Canterbury Adopted Local Plan Commission SP1, Sustainable Development, which clearly states that consideration should be given to the needs of older generation whose usage of their homes is different due to the time spent in the home enjoying the local environment. Please can you reject this planning application under the grounds of the National Planning Policy Framework, as it clearly states that development should be restricted if the sustainable policy has been breached, which it has. As a minimum, you should be instructing or directing that a wildlife impact assessment undertaken before any consideration is given before granted approval. I ask that planning permission is not granted today due to the planning officer's omission of points I've spoken about today. And due to the breaches of both national and your local policy, this application should be rejected on those grounds. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's all right, thank you. And could we call the second speaker, Rosemary Azis?
Good evening, everyone. I am a neighbour and I've had a family home in the area for over 30 years. I object to the planning application because I believe it would have a harmful impact on neighbouring living conditions and an unacceptable impact on the character and appearance of the local area, both at street level and very publicly in the riverside landscape. The residence immediately adjacent to the application site is number 7B, and it is singled out for discussion in the plans. It is claimed that 7B's outlook will be protected. I know the layout at 7B well, and I completely disagree. The block plans show that the extensions to the northwest are large-scale and would obstruct the current outlook from 7B. What for decades has been an open, natural and light outlook from the main living rooms of 7B would be replaced by the walls and roofs of a new building, creating a sense of being hemmed in. Despite the northwest extensions being single-storey with some flat roofs, daylight would be reduced and the direction of sunlight interrupted from early afternoon to sunset, both bringing the risk of overshadowing. I have no doubt that this proposal would significantly diminish light and outlook for 7B, factors considered in DBE 3 of the local plan. Such a loss in the quality of living conditions at 7B is unacceptable, and I'm genuinely concerned about the harm it would have on the mental health and well-being of those living there. The local plans require extensions and alterations to integrate and be compatible with the original, but in this case it seems that the new build and design dominate. The original building is typical of the surrounding properties and local area, but it would be hard to recognise it after the proposed work. The 90 square metres of the original building would become a minor contribution at the rear of the new 300 square metre property. What remains of external walls would be changed from the characteristic yellow brickwork to white render, and the original roof tiles replaced with darker slate. In a variety of ways, a building would be created that stands out rather than integrates with the surrounding architecture, disrupting the local visual amenity. Finally, I'd like to draw attention to the location of the application site, as this is visually prominent from several directions. At a residential street level, it would occupy a dominant position at the head of the Hassel Reach cul-de-sac. And even more publicly, the building and its landscaping would be on full view from the Great Stour Way on the other side of the river. These are the grounds for my objection. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And can we move to Jennifer Soane, please? Our next speaker.
Thank you. I should be interested to know if anybody from the Planning Committee has actually visited Hassel Reach and seen for themselves just how close number 7A is to number 7B. It seems extraordinary that item 7D of the Planning Commission report states that the extension to 7A would not create unacceptable overshadowing to 7B. With an extension wall of approximately 12 foot in height and a distance of barely 11 feet from that wall to the conservatory of 7B, it would seem absolutely otherwise, and photograph evidence should show you how close it is. Item 12 suggests that no harmful impact to 7B would accrue. Surely loss of light, sunlight and outlook created by such close proximity must have a harmful impact on 7B and render the conservatory of 7B unusable for its original purpose. Item 11, referring to the local plan, states that it seeks to ensure that any proposals have regard to overshadowing, loss of sunlight, and loss of outlook, all of which would be the result to 7B should this application be passed. There is also a consideration about the effects of drainage. The whereabouts of the main sewer at the end of Hassel Reach is apparently not known. May I urge you to please think carefully of the effect this large-scale extension to 7A would have on the homeowner of 7B. the comfort and well-being she derives from her own home here would be seriously diminished. I would also mention that there is concern amongst the majority of the homeowners in Hassel Reach that this proposed extension would not be for a domestic use, but would be turned into Airbnb, such as is already happening in another property in Hassel Reach, which is by no means a happy experience for some of the residents. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now we've got Councillor Gary Port, Fannington Parish Council, please.
Thank you, Chair and Committee. With regards to the property at 7A Hassel Reach, Fannington Parish Council strongly encourages the committee to reject the proposal as submitted. This development is entirely out of keeping with the other homes in the close, both in size and design. The new modernised roof structure, extension and surrounding wall is clearly visible to the homes around and does not match the existing character in the area. This is clear in the artist renderings and the street view images submitted with the application. The report's assertion that the property will be screened is not accurate, as the screening itself is out of character, and the extended roof property will be clearly visible above it. There is no difference to the rural character of Hassel Reach and its surroundings. This is not a city space that would suit a modern structure, nor is it an isolated property where neighbours are not a consideration. There is also an issue with Mr Callis's intent for the property. When the application on number 6 Hassel Reach was granted against all objections, Mr Callis claimed that there was primary residence, which it is not and has never been. It has been used solely for commercial purposes, and we strongly believe this property will be likewise, especially as this has been stated by Mr Callister himself in a text exchange with a resident after yet another noise complaint. At the very least, we believe Mr Callister should have to apply for a change of use for number 6 and reapply for 7A under the same condition. It's intended that this commercial let and allow residents to comment on as such. Allowing a commercial property to be developed without giving the residents an opportunity to comment is a fail with the democratic process we all trust to be fair. Plans for the development should also be adjusted under the scale of the property is more in keeping with the surrounding homes and in keeping with the more rural traditional landscape. The lack of environmental assessment is alarming given the property's proximity to the river and the all associated wildlife that it contains, that we can expect to be disrupted not just by the property itself but the works required to complete its development. The commercial let at number 6 already frequently disturbs residents, not just in Hassel Reach, but along Ashford Road with noise from parties and late loud night discussion for holidaymakers in the hot tub. At a second holiday let to this small area will make it unlivable for many residents, at least one of whom is actively trying to leave the area to get away from disruption. However, the proximity to busy commercial holiday is making it difficult. Finally, this is a small close, one way in, one way out. The disruption that development scale will cause those living in this will be huge. Large plant vehicles needed to do the project, particularly digging out the pool. The proximity of the neighbours of the development will make the noise and dust mitigation impossible. Approval of this application would serve to solidify Canterbury City Council has no regard for the semi-rural character of Fannington as an individual parish, separating from Canterbury City Council, and that Canterbury City Council supports developers working the system to their own ends at the expense of the local community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And finally, we've got Megan Sullivan Callister, who is the daughter of on behalf of the applicant.
Evening, I'm Megan. My parents are currently overseas, so I'm here on behalf of them. We are a family of 5 with our youngest daughter being 10 years of age. She attends the local Charlton Junior School. We currently live in Preston and our daily school runs are in excess of 3 hours. Soon after moving to Preston from Wincheap, we realised we had made a mistake moving out of the area. In order to manage the school runs, my wife took early retirement from the NHS. We have long-standing links to Hassel Reach for over 30 years. We have a number of friends living there,
and it has been a desire of ours to live there for many years. Most of the residents have indeed lived there for many years, having raised their own families there. We initially purchased number 6 and completed a refurb in May 2023. At that time, we had not sold our house in Preston, and we needed to increase the size of number 6 to suit our needs. We were granted planning permission for extensions to number 6 in September 23. Whilst awaiting the sale of our house, we decided to let number 6, as well as regular use by family and close friends. This gave us a chance to recoup some of our expenditure while we sought to sell our current home. During this interim period, we noticed that number 7A had not sold and had been on the market for over 6 months. We purchased 7A as it adjoined number 6, and our first intention was to create an increased garden for number 6 and then retain the 7A for my elderly parents who plan to move from North Wales in due course. We even started a refurb on 7A, then my wife suggested it may be better to extend 7A. We liked that it was set back from the river, further reducing flood risk. We liked the aspect and the fact it was detached. I enrolled an architect and asked him to not only design a property desirable to us, but also take into account the previous comments from the neighbours next door. The entire design had been carefully thought through to limit impact, as confirmed by the planning officer's report. We also took the opportunity to change the existing access to 7A, which currently passes the front conservatory of 7B. The result would be more privacy, as well as giving her the end plot. I personally took all plans to show her and asked for comment before it was submitted, to which she had none. I also shared our plans with the 52 residents WhatsApp group and offered to meet anyone to share the plans prior to me submitting. Nobody wished to meet me, but many did send nice comments back thanking me. The objectors to my application are all in that group, and nobody raised any comments or concerns. Our home in Preston is now under offer. Once that completes, we plan to temporarily move into number 6 and build out number 7A as our forever home, subject to this planning application. Number 6 will then be retained from my parents directly next door to us. By securing planning on 7A, we will not be building out the already approved planning on number 6. My family have found this whole process for just over 12 months very stressful and personal. We have been honest throughout with everyone. We are good people, kind and generous, and want to give our children the best living environment and childhood memories they can look back on fondly. Please approve this application for my family to live here.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. It's complicated. I think what I'd like to do is just hear a few views from committee members. Quite quickly, if people want to speak. Okay. Dan Smith and then Dane Buckman.
Actually, just a quick question for the planning officer I could do. This is very close to the river, and I believe it's because it's an extension, not a new development, but the Stodmarsh issue has not been raised at all. And I do wonder if that is relevant. Thank you.
It's an extension. I think this is the point. Yes, Christian's not.
Yes, that's correct. It's not leading to an increase in overnight stay accommodation within the district. The number of residential units are staying the same. So on that basis, Stodmarsh isn't a consideration here.
The actual construction site is still of equivalence to an independent dwelling, in effect.
That's correct. It's a householder extension, so the residential unit is staying as one, so there's no increase.
If it was going to be two separate ones, that would have to be a different application. Councillor Buckman, Stockley, Councillor Bothwell.
Okay, I'll try and do this in some sort of order. I think residents find it difficult to fill in representations online when they have to put their names and addresses down, especially in like small communities. I know you can email the planning officers or such, but they do, and I think sometimes it can be quite off-putting to people, as I say, in a smaller area. Obviously, the Hassel Reach one, it sort of rung a bell from sort of this time last year or whenever, about number 6. How I think originally it was down as a primary dwelling, and then it turned into an Airbnb. And then I was looking on the Airbnb site just to make sure that I was correct with that. And I did notice a review from August 2023 that someone had the most amazing time at the Airbnb. So obviously it was quite a quick turnaround, and that was August, not September. So yeah, I think it is. It does. I have. Well, yes. It was one question. Yeah, when you say single story, that always makes it sound quite low. But how high can single story be? Or is it excluding the roof, or does it include the roof? Because obviously that could have quite a bearing on overlooking the property. And then obviously it does, because of that change in use from primary residence going to Airbnb, it does break my confidence a little bit, as if like the plans will be, or it will be built to plan, and especially when we are limited sometimes on planning enforcement, and if it does get accepted, how can we make sure it is built to plan? And then sorry, the other one as well, because there's a swimming pool for the family at the back. How close to the river will that be? Well, will that have an impact on the river behind? I don't know how close it is to that. But that's it. Yeah, I was just thinking, it's their retirement, or they were sort of old style bungalows, and this new build, it's just, my point after hearing all this now is it is like really out of character to the rest of it. But that's it for the moment.
So just to pick up your last point, the swimming pool.
I don't mind you replying. Carry on. Well, I was going to say we've got one or two other comments, so let's take them, shall we? Councillor Stockley and Councillor Bothwell.
Thank you, Chair. Can I ask you to turn to page whatever it is? I've got my glasses on. Hold on. 161. Throughout this, there's been somewhat confusing to myself, referring to 7A and 7B. My understanding is the drawing on 161 shows 7A as the building with the conservatory, which we've heard from the lady. But throughout the speakers, they've been talking about extending 7A, which in fact is the wrong building, according to the map we've got. So I'm a little bit puzzled. I think we've got a material error.
That does look right, actually. Can we just check? Apparently it's the Ordnance Survey that's got it the wrong way around. Yeah. Okay. So that's misleading, but
so how do we go about that? Because we've just heard all these people discussing what apparently is the correct building, but the information we've got indicates an incorrect building. How do we verify that we're talking and granting permission for the correct building, indeed, if we do?
The Ordnance Survey plan is wrong, but it's identifying the right area of land.
You want to explain that?
Yeah, the address in the on the application is correct, 7A. The Ordnance Survey plan is incorrect. It shows 7B, but it does show the correct area of land. It shows the area of land where 7A is. So putting it together, you've got an application to extend 7A.
Are we supposed to guess this, or are we supposed to know exactly what we're talking about? My point is that legally, how do we stand when the Ordnance Survey is regarded as an authoritative document, and yet we've got conflicting information?
Well,
can we decide it?
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. It's very unusual. I haven't seen this before, to be honest with you. But the plan shows the building that is proposed to be extended, and the application was made for 7A, which is that building that's proposed to be extended. But yes, the Ordnance Survey plan is very confusing, but it doesn't prevent us from deciding the application, because we have identified the property and we've identified the correct address.
Yeah. Councillor Bothwell.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, looking at the application documents lodged on the council website, I am sympathetic to the objectors' points of view. The floor plan of the proposed building as extended is about 2 to 3 times larger than the original floor area, and it goes in front of the existing adjoining building 7B. So I think the outlook from 7B will be very severely compromised in the way that they're suggesting. So it will completely change their outlook if this building is approved. Thank you.
I think we need to just be clear about whether we're talking about the right to a view, which I don't think is part of the decision making. So if we're going to, if I...
Can I clarify? I mean, it's not really the view. Well, it's not a
Well,
view.
that's what we need to clarify.
It's not like a distant view of something in the distance. It's just the outlook, looking out of your front window with this huge extension going forward by at more than the existing length of the building again in front of your window to the side. Just, you know.
I think where I'm going with this is just understanding that, you know, which I think there is an issue, which is that it goes around the house in that kind of way. So we could talk about the closed-in feeling, or hemmed-in feeling that this would create for the house next door. Councillor Naomi Smith.
I think it's covered in, and it was brought up by one of the speakers in item 11, is that it should have regard to amenity of neighbouring builders and future occupiers, including from potential overshadowing and loss of outlook. Because these buildings appear very close to 7B. Yes. Okay, no, so it just seems like it is overbearing rather than, as you say, we know you don't have the right to a view. You can lose your view, but this is different. I think it's because the proximity of this building in front of you. You basically got a brick wall in front of you.
Oh, sorry.
Scale and location.
Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to ask, yeah, it is overbearing, I can see in the scale of it, but the concern is what measure did we take regarding coming to the decision about the impact of their loss of light? It's not just, obviously we all know about the view, you know, if you've got the view of Windermere and someone is allowed to build a house in front of it, hey-ho, but I'm not talking about that. We're talking about the overbearingness and obviously the tracking of how the sun comes now, what light do they or will they lose potentially, and how have we measured that within this report so that we can come to a decision saying that's an acceptable level?
Have we got any other practical questions? Because I think it would be good to take them all. Councillor Stockley.
Hopefully practical, Chair. Looking at the drawing on 162, there are steps. I assume there's steps indicated. So are we looking at a building that is increasing, or a plot that's increasing in height or decreasing as you go towards the garage stroke store? So we're going down steps.
So can we answer both those questions? Christian, could you? So this was the loss of light and the stairs.
Yeah, sure. So in terms of the living conditions, as mentioned within the officer report, given that the extension is single storey in scale and it is set back from the neighbouring occupier, that was considered to be acceptable with regards to an overbearing impact. In terms of exact measurements, the height of the extension is 3 metres, and then towards the end, the eaves is 3 metres as well, pitching away from the neighbour. And then in addition to this, the extension is set down from the ridge of the existing bungalow, which sort of reinforces its single-storey, modest nature. What was the second question? Oh, the topography. Yes, it's descending. So as you go towards the river, you descend, basically.
do we have a proposal from anybody? Bearing in mind we need to give reasons. Did you say crowding it? David, yes. Sorry, Councillor Thomas.
I mean, it states on the paperwork about this property being an Airbnb, but that's I'm assuming that's the neighbours assuming it's going to be an Airbnb. So again, we can't consider that as an application. This one's really a difficult one, isn't it? Because it does feel to me like it's going to be overbearing. You're almost giving a planning application for another bungalow, aren't we? Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Stockley.
Thank you, Chair. It just occurred to me that in many occasions, if you wish to extend the building line, it can cause problems, and it's not considered a good thing. And obviously, the two bungalows, whichever numbers we're talking about, 7A and 7B, originally are in line with each other, as indeed is number 7, really. So this is going to be a major front extension pushing on. I personally feel it's overdevelopment, but whether or not that would stand planning inspectors, I don't know.
I'm going to suggest that we refuse this application on the grounds that the new development would be overbearing and creating a sense of enclosure for the neighbouring property. Let me get it right, at 7B. Let's get it right. Do I have a seconder? Lots of people. Councillor Mackenzie was the first, I think. So we've got a seconder. And could I put that straight to the vote, please?
So that vote is carried with 10 in favour and 2 abstaining.
Now we need to take a vote to extend the meeting by half an hour. Hopefully we won't be half an hour, but we need to extend it because if we get to 11, we can't continue the next case. But it's up to you guys how long, obviously, you want to speak on the last item, but we must do it justice. It's really important. So can I have a vote, please, in favour of extending this to deal with, it's our last case. People have waited all this time. Can I have a vote, please? Okay, so hands, show of hands. Oh, yes, fine. That's lovely. Thank you very much.
Was that unanimous to extend for half an hour, yes? Yes. Okay, lovely. Thank you.
Thanks very much. So we now move on to item 12, which is the application number CA24 00192, 8 Beckett Mews, Canterbury. Sorry, who's going to introduce this now? You'll be doing it. Andrew Gamble will introduce the report. Emily Raw's not well, so she's not able to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This is an application 8 Beckett Mews in Canterbury for a rear dormer and 2 roof lights to front. This is the site in red. It's an end terrace property in the Canterbury West Conservation Area. These are the proposals, so you can see the existing elevations at the top and the proposed at the bottom. The dormer, you can see in my cursor here, that's at the rear of the property, the roof lights at the front. Here you can see the front of the property, so this arrow shows you the approach that the photo's been taken from. The roof lights would sit in the roof there. The rear is quite enclosed because it's got carriage mews behind it where there's a row of properties, so it's not possible to get a picture from the road behind the dwelling. But this is a view from the side, so this is from Kirby's Lane, which is quite a transitory route, so you would move up and down it either by car or kind of walking. So this is a glimpse view you get between properties, and that is where possibly you're most likely to see the dormer from. But given its relatively small scale in that context and given the separation distance from Kirby's Lane, the proposal is considered to have an acceptable impact on the character and appearance of the conservation area and is considered acceptable subject to conditions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We've got one speaker, Councillor Michael Dixie, if you'd like to come forward. Thank you.
Good evening, and a very long one it has been too, hasn't it? I'm the ward councillor for this area, as you probably know, and I've asked for this application to come to committee because of the poor design of the rear dormer. I have no objection at all to there being a rear dormer or to the two front roof lights, but I do object to the design of the dormer. This house is in the Canterbury West Conservation Area, and the Canterbury Heritage Design Forum, whose advice I find invaluable, sums up the shortcomings of the design, and I'll quote, "The proposal is for a huge box dormer occupying most of the rear roof slope. The dormer is of a poor design with windows of non-matching construction, which are close to the roof edge and will thus be able to overlook the neighbouring gardens. The side elevation is overbearing and out of scale, and it will overshadow the neighbour." End of quote. Beckett Mews is part of the Station Road West development, which was an award-winning housing development some 30 years ago, built on the site of the old bus works. This was in the days when this council picked up awards, many awards for good design. This was one of them. Whitefriars was another. Long Market was another, to name two more. Sadly, we don't seem to pick up many these days. Can I suggest that officers go back to the applicant and suggest they revise the design of the rear dormer? Could this application be deferred so that they can do this? Over to you, Chair.
Thank you. I think the consideration in this one is that I think we all know that this area is a very nicely designed housing estate, and I think it would be really good if we could have a picture of this dormer. Can we get one up so that we can have a look? I think the consideration here is whether the comments made by Heritage Design Forum about the dormer are something that the committee feels concerned about. They did suggest a mansard roof. I don't know whether, I'm sorry, it's not your case, so it's difficult. I don't know whether you think that would improve matters. That's just my, Keith. That's what they suggested. So if somebody were to be asked to go back to look at this again, presumably it would be that suggestion we were looking at now. Councillor Bothwell, do you want to answer what I've just said, if you have a view?
Well, personally, I don't think a mansard roof would improve it. It would probably look even more bulky. I think the fenestration is particularly bad in the dormer. It's asymmetrical. It's they don't line up with the windows below. It just needs to be more elegantly designed, and I would agree with Councillor Dixie's recommendation that officers are asked to revert to the applicant.
I mean, they could clearly come back with a new design if we refuse this. Would you like to propose it, that we refuse? because you've got the reasons.
Yes, I propose that this application is refused on the basis of very poor design of the dormer window.
Enough? And I'm happy to second that. Shall we just move to the vote? Andrea, can we just move to the vote? Thank you.
So that is carried 11 in favour and 1 abstention.
We do need to deal with a couple of other things. So can I just hold your horses for a minute? Because I do need to close the meeting for an item at the end. In fact, a couple of things we need to deal with. But at the moment, what I'd like to talk about is the Planning Appeals Report. Do you want to comment on it? The Planning Appeals? No. So can we just note this report at this stage by general assent, everybody? So we've noted the report by general assent. I have been notified of an item that people want to discuss, and so we do have something urgent business to be dealt with, not in public, but urgent business which falls outside the exempt provisions. So please could we close the meeting to the public? Thank you very much. I need to propose, we're getting very tired now. I need to propose, please. Yes, please do.
So, Councillor Edwards is proposing to resolve that under section 100A4 of the Local Government Act 1972, the press and public be excluded from the meeting during consideration of the following item of business on the grounds that there would be a disclosure of exempt information as defined in Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Act, or the Freedom of Information Act, or both. Is there a seconder?
And then we cut off the...
Yeah, a seconder.
Chair, can I inquire as to what status our security guards have?
They treat everything as confidential, don't they? I definitely want them here. We're in favour of them.
I'm just going to turn off the stream now.
Oh, sorry, I thought you already had. I wouldn't have said that. No, I'm in favour.